Right now with capitalism, all of the gains in automation, it goes to the owner class. All you have to do is have everyone be an owner, and now suddenly any gain in automation is a gain for everybody. If you grow just one thing, it may not grow as well as if it grows with another thing. A good example of that is called the Three Sisters method of farming.
There is definitely multi-apartment buildings or multifamilies that do passive design.
$100 million that they gave to Joe Rogan that they would kind of be out if they breach contract. Is that a bigger number? Or is 2 billion a bigger number?
I don't know, Zach.
It's a tough one. I
It's
know.
really hard.
And maybe comparing numbers is not Jeremy's strong suit. Gotta go kill a Jenny.
I still don't think you should kill her. I don't think it's a good idea.
It's a ghost, dude. Welcome back, everybody, to Bread Theory. So tonight's going to be a lighter stream. I just got a new and better job, so I'm happy about that. It's going to be more money than I've ever been making before, and more responsibility, and I'm really looking forward to it.
Plus a commission.
Plus a commission, yeah. So that's part of the more money. But it's keeping on with landscaping for the summer. So I'll be starting in just a couple of weeks here. So I'm excited about that. So I thought, since I've in kind of celebration, I thought it'd be fun to just do some lighter stuff. And what better subject than PragerEwww to really tear into? They're basically one of the best locales on the right. They're and luckily they have super short videos, so we can get through quite a bunch of them. Oh, I'm already losing Amanda. So we can get through quite a bunch of them stream.
Why are you like this?
So I have my wife here tonight. Say hi, Amanda.
Hi.
How you doing?
P.S. I'm not allowed to make any noises.
I didn't
Look
say
at
that.
my phone or yawn.
I didn't say that. I didn't say
I'm a
that one
human
bit.
being.
Don't believe her. Don't believe the hype.
It's not hype.
Before we get started, though, I just wanted to shout out my new T-shirt. The designer of this shirt is a good friend of mine, Joey. Joey draws pictures and puts them on shirts, I think is the name of his store on Etsy. And he does a lot of really great, beautiful leftist designs. So go check him out.
Lots of color choices too.
Each shirt comes in a wide variety of color choices.
A plethora.
You don't usually see like this shade of blue as an option for a T-shirt. So I was happy to see it. But this is great. It's a nice printing. This one is called Plantarchy. Oh, I'm behind the microphone again. This one's called Plantarchy. You can probably see why. It's
Stand up, show them.
I'm not going to stand up because then I will be completely off screen. But I think they saw it. So anyway, go check them out. Joey draws pictures at threadless.com or .threadless.com.
.threadless.com.
Yeah, and I've been trying to get Joey as part of the Left Signal Boost TV community. We are a collective now of, I think we're up to 13 creators on Facebook. So you may be watching the stream from there as we speak. But if you're not, definitely go check out the page, and you will see live streams. You'll see content from a whole wide variety of leftist creators, and not just video makers, but we have visual artists, educators, people that do a wide variety of stuff. So it's a really good time. Always something going on there. So if you want your one-stop place to find out about a lot of leftist creators,
don't get left behind.
Yeah. Oh, we just got author Brent L'engle, or Brenton L'engle, as a new member. He has done a couple of graphic novels, Snow White Zombie Apocalypse, and more recently, Durruti, Shadow of the People, about Buenaventura Durruti, one of the anarchist leaders during the Spanish Republic, the Spanish Second Republic civil. It was basically the Spanish Civil War. It was kind of the prelude to World War II. Oh shoot! So anyway, go check out Left Signal Boost TV. You can find out about all those creators there.
Check it out.
Thanks for the visual representation of a check mark.
Oh wait, this is hard.
Yeah, just think backwards. So check it out. Nope, backwards check. There you go. You got it.
No, I don't like it.
Okay.
I can't.
You see, because the camera is looking at us, it's like a person looking straight at us. So think of the camera as you're actually talking to a person.
Mhm.
So if you're going to tell like one of your, fourth graders or kindergartners, let's say kindergartners, how do you do it? How do you do a check mark? You'd be like, do. You do it opposite, right? Yeah, there you go. It's something to get used to. Definitely took me a while to get used to that. The opposite direction. I guess this is gonna be Amanda's role for the stream. But anyway, let's take a look at some PragerEwww.
TikTok dance.
Oh, we're gonna do TikTok dances.
Yeah.
I don't know if we're gonna get into TikTok as much. Maybe we should cover TikTok sometime. That's not really something I've explored as much. But I bet there's plenty of cringe stuff and cool stuff as well on
Trashy
TikTok.
landlord TikTok.
Oh yeah, that'd be a good one. Landlord TikTok is just a wasteland.
TikTok, more like.
Yeah, basically. Yeah. Enough said.
Okay. Nope.
What are we doing?
I got real excited because I had something pop into my head, and now I want to say it out loud, but I can't.
Okay. All right. So this first one we're going to look at is when big business went woke. And I defy any right-winger out there to give me a succinct definition of what woke means. Because it is just become one of those meaningless catch-alls they love so much. It's basically the same as communism to them. It's whatever I don't like. Usually, like whatever is the nice thing to do for someone, or say just treating people with humanity,
Caring about
basic
other people that
decency.
are maybe a little different.
I
than
guess
you.
that's all what Wokism means. As though any person on the left would even, that was like a thing from like 2015, maybe even that late. The idea of people unironically referring to themselves as woke, because it's especially for say a white leftist, that's a pretty cringe thing to do, to say, oh, I know about all of your struggles, people that I don't actually share those struggles with. It's just dumb. So but somehow it's caught on the right. But they need their little cultural signifiers to latch on to, like the Let's Go Brandon. That's been so triggering for
They love Brandon.
well, nobody. I don't think even actual Biden supporters. I've never actually seen one of them even get mad about Let's Go Brandon.
Because we don't care. I mean, I shouldn't say we don't care because I don't really like him that much.
Oh no, he's been a complete waste of space. I guess he's not as actively horrible as Trump was, but that's a pretty low bar.
He's like a placeholder.
He's definitely not doing great things, like fulfilling any of his campaign promises. But hey,
allowing student loan debt be able to be transferred to other, like federal loans, can move to private people, and then they can raise
the
interest rates after December of 2023,
rather than just getting rid of all student debt and really juicing the economy in the process. Because where would those dollars go if not to service debt for all those student loans?
He do it though.
He can do it. He doesn't want to do it. He's going to come up with any weak ass reason not to do it. Anyway, let's get into when big business went woke. So prepare yourself for some high level ideas.
All right,
they're coming at you.
That's cool.
Wokism, the idea that America is a systemically racist country, and that your identity is defined by your race, your gender, and your sexual orientation.
See, but those are actually parts of people's identity, just like conservative is a part of, hopefully just a part of people's identity, or leftist is just a part of people's identity. Hopefully people are more rich and varied than just a single identity. So sure, those are categories which do apply to most people. That's not to say that those should be the only things that define you, but no leftist worth their salt is actually going to say that. It should be that way. So
that's all that defines me.
Oh, it's all that defines you.
Yeah.
Oh well, don't I feel foolish now? Anyway, so here's their definition. Wokeism
is no longer about challenging the system.
Oh, so it was about challenging the system. When was that?
Wokism is the system.
This is the funniest part, that they just, it's like how they think that because Biden's in office, now we have like a communist commander in chief who's instituting Marxist principles. Of course, if they were ever pressed, they couldn't name a single Marxist principle other than, I assume they would defer to wokeism again, but
They're woke.
it's basically just a bunch of
people crying wolf.
yeah, hysteria, more or less, at the idea that anyone would want. And again, what has Biden actually done?
Nothing.
He gave us part of the money that he promised in stimulus.
Rode Trump's coattails.
Yeah.
In that.
Yeah. Yeah, he hasn't actively promoted stuff like ivermectin, I suppose. I don't know how much credit we should give him for that, though. Like, that's just kind of, again, the bare minimum. So so for all of this sky is falling sort of rhetoric, I mean, you got to wonder what they're actually scared of here. Anyway, let's find out. Maybe they'll get into it.
Blame the radical academics, blame the college administrators,
It's always
blame the
college.
woke graduates. But these aren't the people who took wokeism mainstream. That dubious distinction belongs to an unexpected source. Big business.
Dun, dun,
Your
That's
dun.
right.
favorite.
The largest
How
company.
could you get mad at big business? You love big business.
Yeah, they do, and they try to actively deny that, but it's clear they love the current system. They certainly don't like anyone that criticizes the system. I mean, obviously, that's exactly what they're speaking out against right now. But let's hear about how big businesses plan to make everybody woke.
Companies in America, the standard bearers of American capitalism.
So he is. This is Vivek Ramaswamy. I'm certain I butchered that name. I apologize for that, at least. But author of Woke Inc. Oh, I've heard of that stupid book. Inside the Corporate America's Social Justice Scam. All right, let's hear the hard-hitting facts that prove that wokeism is intentionally being foisted upon an unwilling American public by business. Let's find out why.
Have
We
injected
love
this virus.
business.
I mean, they do love business. He's wearing a business suit for this video.
Yeah.
He's not even dressing down to pretend to be one of the poorest.
Nope.
He probably owns a business. I mean, I guess he's self-employed if he's
He
an
probably
author.
is a business.
He probably is a business. So he's probably self-employed. Or I suppose he may have a contract with a publisher, but definitely has more control over his business environment than most people would, being an author, even if he's beholden to an editor.
Right.
Still a lot more control than a lot of us have. Anyway, let's move on.
Virus into the arteries of commerce.
Right
Our
into the
story begins in
arteries.
2008, following the mortgage crisis that led to the near collapse of the entire banking system. Bankers got paid a lot of money when times were good, but got a bailout from taxpayers when times went bad.
What about those subprime mortgages that were at that time?
Oh, the predatory lending? Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. No. It was it's all government's fault again. The culprit always has to be government. Otherwise the entire narrative breaks down. You can't have that.
Well, that's because the right is so anti-government that the government couldn't possibly be a tool to help all.
Right, and that's the thing.
society.
So if you're anti-government and you want fewer regulations for business, doesn't that make you pro-business? Like, how are you against big business at that point? I don't know. Doesn't make sense.
Silly.
So no wonder Americans were skeptical of capitalism, and for good reason.
No
Oh,
wonder
no.
Americans were skeptical of capitalism, and for good reason. Because it was really just crony capitalism.
Oh, this is the meaningless modifier that they put on there, as though capitalism could function without the regulation of government. Like, imagine a capitalism where there was no court to arbitrate contract disputes, or no police force to protect you if your stuff got stolen.
Oh my gosh, the right would go crazy.
They would go crazy. I mean, some of them would be able to afford, say, a private security firm, but
Still,
that's still not going to, what if they go up against a more powerful company with a more powerful security firm? And, I mean, they're right back to square one. They're beholden to the might makes right sort of way of looking at things, or the law of the jungle, the dog eat dog world.
Dog eat dog.
So this notion of crony capitalism, that's the way capitalism works. Capitalists spend a lot of money lobbying government for better regulations, more favorable conditions, tariffs on their foreign competitors, and trade deals if they're sending their stuff internationally. So yeah, crony capitalism is a meaningless modifier.
The old left wanted to punish the banks in the usual way, seize their money and redistribute it to the poor.
The banks? Was it the banks that have historically paid the most taxes? Or has it been like individuals and business in general?
Isn't it middle class America that pays the majority
Well,
of taxes?
proportionally of their income. And I'm just saying, in absolute terms, is it really the banks that we're looking to punish? I don't think so. I think it's business, and specifically rich individuals through income tax and luxury tax, which we don't have anymore, and estate tax, which thank goodness we have at least that. So the 100 largest families can't just build dynasties forever. That some of their lifetimes of accumulated wealth gets redistributed. But okay, let's see what the new left wants instead.
But the new woke left added a new twist.
Oh, and of course, it's gone from a elderly gentleman representing the old left to a younger looking hip woman with a hip hat and stuff like that, because it's the new woke one, and she looks really upset too. Like, did that guy look upset? I don't think so.
The old left.
No, he looks pretty agreeable, I would say. He's got a big belly laugh going there.
Wanted to punish the banks in the usual way, seize their money and redistribute it to the poor.
Yeah, he's like
but
giving
the
out
new
money.
woke left.
Oh, and she's just upset with everything. It's the new woke left is all the Karens apparently.
It's Karen.
Yeah, even though Karens tend to be right wing, but hey, we'll just gloss over that.
My freedom,
for now.
my liberty.
That's right. Yeah, because most Karens are screaming about things like mask mandates and crap like that, or black people being at the park.
Added a new
I
twist.
shouldn't laugh about that.
The real
It's
problem,
sad.
they said, wasn't just poverty
Only
or
funny because
economic
it's so
injustice.
ridiculous.
It was a 300-year history
Oops.
of white patriarchy. Ironically, this new idea, you know it as critical race theory, presents
another one of those meaningless terms that they'll just slap on anything they don't like. The critical race theory, something which not a one of them can even define.
Because people in the general public don't really talk about it. It's something that's really more discussed at like college.
Yeah, because it was introduced as a law concept in order way to view the world in terms of legal proceedings and examine whether or not there may be systemic biases within law. It has nothing to do with all the things they try to
Say that
slap it on, like making white people feel guilty, or saying slavery was bad, which apparently is controversial, certainly with PragerEwww. But yeah, let's
presented Wall Street with a way to get out of their
He's
PR.
open in elementary school yet.
Oh, who? PragerEwww?
Mhm.
I think he just hates. I don't think he likes kids. I would. He strikes me as the kind of guy who enjoys that other people have kids, but doesn't really want to be around them at all. He'd be like, oh, he'd be like with his grandkid or something like that, and spend a couple of minutes talking to them, but then get so bored that he'd pass them off to grandma or mom or whoever. Anyway, that's
disaster. A way to go from being the bad guys to poof, becoming good guys.
Who thinks that Wall Street is the good guys? What leftists worth their salt is like singing the praises of Wall Street? I mean, Occupy Wall Street, a pretty leftist movement, is 10 years old, just 11 years old at this point.
Hmm.
Since it happened. I'm sure he was even probably close to an adult, if not an adult already, when that was happening. Does he think that's just left the collective memory at this point? That
Yeah.
now that they're doing like rainbow capitalism and like pandering to Pride Month and BLM and stuff like that.
Oh my gosh, the merchandise. That's my
Right. Well, and that's
I don't feel comfortable with that. Like,
well, I totally understand that. And when it gets down to it, that's the reason that they're doing this stuff. They don't care. I mean, you can look at their corporate policies, you can look at who is in charge of these corporations. It's not a rainbow coalition.
right.
It is still mostly old white guys.
Hmm.
Old cis straight white guys at that.
Right.
Old cis straight Christian white guys at
I
that.
mean, hell, if you even look at the Biden administration, yes, he has elected more people of color, but all of them, I mean, a majority of them still kind of lean more center.
Yeah. Oh, sure. And Biden
Like-
himself is like the most centrist politician we've had in decades.
Mhm.
I mean,
If Biden were a color on the color wheel, he'd be gray.
I think it'd be like taupe or something like that.
Sorry, you want to say that one more?
Taupe? Or is it taupe?
Yes.
You gonna challenge me on that?
Yes,
Fine.
I am.
All right. Word police. He'd be
Wow.
taupe. He would be eggshell. on the color.
Ecru.
Ecru. I don't know what that means.
That's the same as eggshell.
Okay. Is that the correct
Taupe?
Pantone?
Taupe? Who's? Sorry.
It's Taupe.
taupe.
It looks like taupe to me. Whatever. That's not why we're here, to argue colors,
Well,
especially such beigey colors.
taupe is lovely. I like it.
That's like the color of the walls in our room here.
No, it's not.
What would you call that?
Off-white. Taupe is like a brownish gray. God. I was an art major. I can argue about this with you.
That's fine. I will
all
defer.
day.
I will defer to your, indoctrination at your liberal university for that one. But just moving on.
All they had to
Move
do
on while you can.
was to admit that their eyes had been opened.
MoveOn.org.
In other words, they woke up. You want us to fix global warming? No problem. You want us to get...
What are
What is wrong
corporations
with
doing?
global
Well, I mean,
warming?
true. What's wrong with that sentiment? But what are corporations doing to fix global warming other than
Nothing.
greenwashing stuff? Again, it's just marketing. It doesn't actually mean anything just because they're selling. They're like
Oh, Earth Day
LED
t-shirt.
light bulbs now, and buy electric cars rather than gas powered cars. Like these are just.
Though I am pretty excited about my eco bag that I got from work.
Oh yeah, I mean it's fine stuff to have, but it's not like that. We're not going to consume our way to fixing global warming. That's just silliness, and they're not really cutting their emissions. Maybe they're buying carbon offsets, which is itself kind of a scam because a lot of times it's just forests that have no reason to be cleared in the first place, saying we're not going to clear this forest.
Mm-hmm.
Wow, that's so great that you've offset the carbon by stopping something that wasn't coming down the pipeline at all.
Wow.
Yeah, wow. No, they don't care about global warming.
Get on board
Come
with the
on.
transgender movement? Sure, we'll do that too.
No, they will signify that sort of thing. How many trans CEOs are there, or even on the board of directors, or even in upper management positions at any of these corporations? I would guess few to none.
Probably none, because we know how they feel about trans people in sports right now.
I know, precisely, and I would wager to say that Caitlyn Jenner is the most rich and powerful trans person in this entire country, if not the entire world. I would put money on that. I don't think there's anyone else who's out and trans and has more. And that's one person. That's like the one person, the one trans person that conservatives know.
Blair White.
Except, well, I mean, I mean, she's like a Z-list celebrity. She's pretty much only known by the online right and the online left. I mean, you talk to any random person on the street who doesn't spend all their time on politics. I'm sure they haven't not heard of Blair White. And I doubt she's all that rich or successful, because
Yeah.
even the right doesn't like her, which is incredibly sad.
She's an abomination.
Well, right, because for all their tokenism, there's only so far that tokenism will go with them. It's why they're all trashing Dave Rubin at this point, because he dared to have children. Like, this is somehow a mortal offense to all these hardline right wingers. He would dare have children and talk about them.
It's just so funny because, like, when gay people get to become parents, it's like much harder, and it's a
they have to really
proactive
want
choice.
it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's not like us where
Yeah,
it could happen.
an accidental
naturally.
night of
Yep.
poor
Fun.
planning. Yeah. So if anything, they should be celebrating more kids being in loving homes, but
Right.
no, of course
We
not,
don't like that
'cause
because
it
then
doesn't fit their preconceived
we
notions.
get into that, weird stuff,
Yeah.
rainbows and
All right.
strangeness.
That's definitely how they look at it. Yeah.
Solve systemic racism? Sounds great.
Again, are there actual high-powered people marching with Black Lives Matter?
No.
No, there's not. I mean, there's maybe people like Jesse Jackson who will come and speak at an event once in a while, but that's
He's
kind of
not
been his
a-
entire life's crusade, is getting better parity for Black people.
Mhm.
So other than him, like, people that aren't investing their entire career into that sort of a movement are not showing up at these. At most, again, they'll sell the t-shirt. They'll sell you the hell out of t-shirts that say that on there
Ugh.
because it sells. Guess what
It's
else they
money.
sell? I mean, remember when we went to Florida, and absolutely every single souvenir shop that we went into had at least one 2-piece Confederate flag bikini. Is that corporate wokeism? No, they do, and they probably don't even care about that themselves. Again,
If it sells,
they stock what sells. So if you have racist sentiments and you can put those on a t-shirt or a swimsuit or whatever, that stuff will sell too. I mean, it's just like, think of how many of those stupid red Trump hats got sold. That's certainly not corporate wokeism. And I'm sure a
Right.
lot of the same companies that are printing Black Lives Matter hats, probably the same company that printed my hat, also prints stuff like MAGA. And it doesn't matter to them. They're chasing dollars, because that's what capitalism is. It's about the pursuit of the dollar above all other concerns.
Right.
Anyway,
As long as you don't talk about systemic financial risk. They were happy to
Systemic
add to
financial risk. This is the lamest excuse they always put up there. It's the idea of go woke, go broke. That if you go woke, you end up going broke, and they'll point to like a poorly performing superhero movie, and they're like, oh, look at that! They put a woman in that movie, and now they didn't make as much money in the box office as they hoped, as though that's somehow some great signifier of the broader culture. But again, they're putting out. They're doing representation, and they're doing allusions to wokeness, whatever that might be.
Well,
More
look at
so
the
because
Black
that's what
Panther franchise. I mean, their like primary guy passed away,
Uh-huh.
and it's still thriving. So, like, what
well,
about
right,
that?
yeah. So stuff that, yeah, there's actual no trend like that. And again, they're putting out movies for public consumption. When it comes down to it, even Hollywood is there to chase the dollar. So if they're putting in stuff in their movies that doesn't sell,
Right.
they would take it out of the movies. It's like when what would be a good example? I don't know. There've been plenty of transphobic movies and anti-gay movies and stuff like that at the time captured the public sentiment, or some gay panic or satanic panic. There's plenty of movies that cashed in on that. Hollywood loves that stuff. That's their bread and butter is giving the people what they want. So to say that there's some sort of agenda behind it, and even if there was, like, they can't still
Is this the
make
hill
the
you
people
wanna die
swallow
on?
it. Like, just because you're putting out a movie or a t-shirt or whatever, if it doesn't sell, it doesn't sell. So you may sincerely even believe in it, which from all indications of the makeup of corporate America and Hollywood and all of these high-powered places, it seems that they don't really care about this stuff when it comes down to it. But even if they did,
Mhm.
if it didn't sell, they would stop doing it. They would have to.
But look at the movie The Room. That movie's awful, and everybody loves it.
Okay, where are you going?
I'm just throwing that out there.
Okay,
That was
that's
a really
that's a
terrible
valid
film.
counterpoint. But it's, I mean, that did not do well when it first came out either. The only reason
It's
it
still
did well,
not doing well.
well, I mean, that's true too. But the only reason that it ever did well is because, it's so bad that people love it. That's a totally different thing. They're not putting out Black Lives Matter t-shirts because it's so corny that people ironically wear the shirt. I don't think there's a single person out there who's ironically wearing a Black Lives Matter t-shirt.
Right.
People buy it because they want to represent that cause.
They believe in it.
They believe in it. So it therefore sells. So he's got it completely backwards. He's acting as though somehow big business is driving these movements, when in fact it's the other way around. It's the consumers signaling that they want this stuff by buying it,
right,
that causes them to buy.
That's why they
put
sell
out more of it.
Confederate flag bikinis.
That's why they sell Confederate flag bikinis. I'm sure you could go into any Florida gift shop right now, especially ones that appeal to tourists, and you'd find some Confederate memorabilia.
What I think is also funny about that, though, is if that stuff were to be in the state that we live in, it would not sell.
Well, yeah, I mean,
but I'm just,
we're not a southern state,
market.
but yeah, right, yeah. I mean, that's a good point. It is the market. That's why. That's why it sells as it does.
That blue flew in my eye.
Oh.
In minorities to their boards. They were happy to post a black square on their corporate
tokens. That's rich that he's talking about tokenism, considering that every time PragerEwww wants to talk about the police, they trot out Officer Tatum, who happens to have been a black cop. Every time they want to talk about Wokism, they bring out a person of color. Their token Candace Owens, or this guy who's talking right now, to talk against it. It's kind of strange that it's never just white people who are talking about these sort of cultural issues, that they and also that they only talk about those cultural issues.
Well, because they have to show that even people that are part of BLM don't believe in BLM.
Right, but I mean, again, that's tokenism. They're doing precisely what he's criticizing right now. And yeah, on the corporate Instagram, whoa, that's not exactly a position of power to be in charge of the corporate Instagram. That's not the same as even putting them on the board, which, again, there's very little representation of people of color on any of the Fortune 500 boards, or even Fortune 1000.
Or even public education boards. Sorry.
For sure. No, that's absolutely true as well. Or the boards of large charities. Any corridor of power, any position of power that you can think of, there's pretty poor representation of anyone but white cis hetero males.
Like, I mean, okay, I used to work for Jeremiah program. I'm right when I was leaving. They had their first black female executive.
Right. And even that sort of thing about just getting more representation in places of power, that is more just a liberal idea, not even a leftist idea, because that doesn't address the unfair power structure at all.
Right.
All that does is move the people who are in positions of power. It's kind of the J.K. Rowling idea of, if we just get the right people in the right places, well, then everything will be good and we never have to question the system again, even if it's completely systemically oppressive of certain classes of people. As long as there's some representation and some of the good people in the right places, things are just great and we don't have to think about it.
But the problem with that is that, like, stigma or the stereotypes that people have in their brains. Like, for example, that high power executive at Target, I'm just hypothetical, right? Like, might go to buy a new car. Do you think she's going to get the same treatment at the car dealership that she does get work?
Likely not. I mean,
or
maybe
people are going to assume that she doesn't have the money
impeccably. Then sure.
Even then.
But even then, I'm sure there tends to be discrepancy in treatment.
I mean, I've heard this a lot. Like, I used to help at a battered women's shelter, and while a lot of these women would get flack about the kind of purse that they carried, like, oh, that's a really expensive purse. How are you in a homeless shelter or a domestic abuse shelter?
What are you supposed to use your purse as armor against being battered? Like, what connect the
Like-
two? Where does that even come in?
Like, you have enough money to buy a certain kind of purse, so therefore you shouldn't be in that kind of a situation.
That makes absolutely no sense.
It doesn't make any sense, but I'm telling you, this is a thing that happens.
I mean, psychopathy knows no any of the characteristics that we assign to people. Knows no class, no gender, no race. I mean, there's plenty of psychos in every strata of society. In fact, since capitalism tends to reward people that are ruthless and eager to step on their peers to get ahead,
Ugh.
they're overrepresented. They've done plenty of studies that psychopaths are overrepresented on corporate boards and other positions of power. Way overrepresented in politics, because psychopaths literally don't care what people think about them. So they make good politicians because they can stand up to any criticism. It rolls off their back. They don't care. So anyway, that example that you gave,
I'm just saying.
really
like,
ridiculous prejudice. It makes no sense to me.
But it's there.
I'm sure. Anyway, let's move on in the video.
Corporate Instagram. They were happy to preach about climate change after flying on private jets to fancy ski towns.
Oh, God.
But they didn't do it for free.
So here's the thing with that. You could take the most hypocritical climate change person, like Al Gore tends to be the quintessential one that they throw into the bus for climate change stuff, because he has a mansion and he flies around the world to give his talks, or it doesn't matter who it is. All these people talking about climate, they always try to play this hypocrite gotcha game, as though if they're not living up to their values, then somehow their values are wrong, and that just doesn't follow. Because no matter how many mansions Al Gore has, that doesn't change climate science.
Right. Which he supports. Regardless of how he acts. No matter how many trips these people take on private jets to go to climate conferences, that doesn't change the data or the science about it. So it can still be a real thing that's happening. It can still be worth doing, even if the people who are the loudest advocates for it are not managing to do it themselves. But also consider, okay, as a leftist, do I always make the best shopping decisions?
It's impossible.
It's impossible, because there are only certain things that you can afford. So it limits that within your choices of where you can shop.
Right.
Sure, you can try to do good things. You can try, like I try to shop on Etsy and support a smaller when I can.
Support smaller creators, but still,
it's not always possible.
And even when you do, like this shirt, I don't actually know how this shirt was manufactured. It could involve sweatshops. I mean, these dyes in the shirt could be not great for the environment. It could have non-biodegradable stuff in it. There's all sorts of things that could come into that entire supply chain. It could be overpackaged.
But you can't control that.
You can't control everything. All you can do is make the best choice that's available to you. And there's a key thing too. And that's one of the reasons that the phrase "there's no ethical consumption under capitalism" is to acknowledge that no matter what we do, we're probably going to be doing something that's against our values, just because we live in a system that is antithetical to our values.
Right.
But that also, a lot of leftists stop at that thought, and they're like, well, then it doesn't matter what I do at all. No, you should still try to make the best choice that you can. But
we understand
that is, again, limited by what is available to you, including your time. Like, if you've ever seen The Good Place, any of you out there, we could all be cheaty and take an hour to make a decision about what breakfast food to buy based on which has the ethics behind its entire production chain that most closely align with our personal ethics. But then we would never make a decision.
Drank a lot of almond milk, and that's why he thought he went to hell.
Exactly.
He didn't realize it was not ethically sourced.
Right. And you could be like, oh, I'm trying to make an ethical decision, support factory farming less. I'll drink almond milk. And then you just come to find out that almond growing takes a hell of a lot of water in very parched parts of California that don't receive a lot of natural rainfall, that have to pump aquifers and rivers from other places.
Or you have an allergy and it limits
And it limits what you
your
can.
body limits your
That too.
choices.
There's all sorts of things that could come into play, but we would just be paralyzed by having to analyze things if we
Mhm.
had to absolutely make the most ethical decision at every single time. We'd never end up making a decision.
And you too could become Chidi Adaganye.
Yeah, you could become so paralyzed that you annoy everyone to the point where they're not sad when you're gone.
That's awful.
And that is awful.
I would be sad if I were friends with Chidi.
I would too, but
I would be his friend because he needs help.
anyway, we're getting off.
No.
Getting off topic again.
Is it?
Oh, we're gonna turn this into a good place discussion.
I mean, it is a great show.
It is a great show. I will definitely give it that. Anyway, so yeah, bringing it back to the topic at hand. Yeah, because just because these people are hypocrites doesn't mean the things they're talking about are wrong. You can be a hypocrite and still say correct things. And that goes with anything. You could be an arms manufacturer, but speak out against war. And you could still be correct in speaking out against war. You could be Nestle and take trying to privatize all sorts of water around the world and take it away
Mhm.
from people that are very vulnerable. And you could speak out against people doing exactly what you're doing, and
Mhm.
you would still be correct, even though you're doing the opposite thing.
Right.
So here's the challenge to conservatives: think beyond just the hypocrite gotcha game,
Mhm.
because no matter who you are, conservatives, if they have any sort of moral compass included, some of the things you do in your life, you're a hypocrite for doing.
Right.
It's just part of being a human in this complex world where we cannot know everything.
And I think intent matters a lot too.
Sure.
What's your intent?
Yeah,
Why do you do what you do?
sure. And you can be completely careless about where the things you buy come from. And
Mhm.
then, sure, it might be right to call you out as a hypocrite. It might be right to call out Al Gore or these jet-setting climate scientists as hypocrites. But again, that doesn't mean that what they're saying is wrong. That doesn't mean we shouldn't listen to the things that they're advocating for. Those are completely separate issues.
Right, because they're living in the same world we are. They just have an advantage.
Absolutely true. Absolutely true.
So,
Yep. Moving on.
anybody
As long as the
joined our
banks
stream yet?
said the right things,
No one said anything yet.
they would be left in peace to make their billions. And abracadabra, like a rabbit out of a hat, Woke Inc. was born.
Oh my god.
As though no leftist criticizes corporations for this very thing, for saying one thing and doing another. They get criticized all the time for that. Target every year gets criticized for, their giant ostentatious pride displays that they put out,
Mhm.
because at the same time they fund some pretty anti-LGBTQIA stuff, and a lot of these companies are the same. Disney just got called out by leftists for supporting all kinds of politicians that support the "Don't Say Gay" bill, and
Mhm.
and their executives had to go back. But that's because of public pressure. They say again, things are coming from the opposite direction than they're trying to make it out. It's not as though the executives at Disney really believe that the "Don't
Like,
Say
felt
Gay" bill is
bad.
bad, and then convince the rest of the public to get behind that. No, they publicly stated. I guess they were trying to be neutral about it to begin with, and then people looked into it, found that they were being hypocritical, and the public called them out for that, and made them change their stance,
Right.
or at least their public stance. Like, who knows? Again, who knows what they're doing in private? And rich people have all sorts of ways to funnel money to all
Mhm.
the ghouls that they love to prop up. So I wouldn't be surprised if Disney's still funding plenty of horrible politicians in Florida. But the point is, the pressure's coming the opposite direction. And that's the
Right.
same with all of this stuff. It's not that big business is pushing the culture to be more progressive. More progressive culture is pushing big business to either modify, at in the best cases, actually modify some of the things that they do, but at the very least, signify that they believe in the same things that the culture at large believes in. Black Lives Matter, a very popular organization, supports over 50% support among Americans, especially since George Floyd. That I think that was really the height of their popularity, the protests that followed that incident, but still enjoys incredible popularity. Therefore, these businesses make these sort of overtures to support that sort of thing. There's a good example recently. There was, I can't remember if it was Starbucks or a different company. I think it might have been one of those like outdoor clothing companies. It wasn't, or maybe even REI. I don't remember what it was. One of these outdoor companies. They had this call with this investor call, right? They start the call off by acknowledging that they're on stolen land and giving all this lip service to all this stuff, but then they go into why they're union busting, why they're trying to oppose their workers from organizing into a union. So come on, they're just saying this stuff to say this stuff. I think it might have been REI.
No, I want.
Yeah, you go ahead and look that up. I'll keep playing.
Things went pretty smoothly until the 2016 election. The man who won wasn't supposed to win. And this time, the blame fell not so much on Wall Street, but on Silicon Valley. But they had Wall Street's play.
Who blames Silicon Valley for Trump's victory? Are they just talking
It
about
was Columbia.
Oh, Columbia Sports? I knew it was
Columbia
one of those
and REI both have recently gotten in trouble about that.
Okay, so yeah, all these companies, they will do all they can to pay lip service to these various causes, but then when it comes down to it, they're all union busters. Like even Starbucks, supposed to be the most ethical CEO. That what was his name? Is Ed Schultz?
I don't know.
Somebody Schultz, the CEO of Starbucks.
Schultz.
Charles Schultz. Yeah, there we go. Ed Schultz.
No, that's never mind.
Oh, that's the Peanuts guy.
Yep.
Dang it! Now you can make me look it up. Starbucks CEO.
No.
Ooh. Oh, maybe he's not the CEO. Maybe the president. No. I don't know. Who's the Schultz guy?
Maybe you just really want to watch Charlie Brown.
Howard Schultz. That's the dude. The guy who founded Starbucks. He's supposed to be the most ethical guy. So I guess he's no longer he's still active.
Yeah, usually they step aside
in-
into a smaller role to kind of phase themselves out.
But regardless, he makes all these
Oh.
the point I was trying to make was he's like, oh, we're the most ethical company. We pay our employees well. We have generous benefits. We help pay for college. On and on and on and on. The minute they started wanting to organize, bust out the union busting stuff, and has been they put the full court press on all the businesses, and despite all that, kudos to all the Starbucks stores that have managed to organize despite all the things that he said. But again, when it comes down to it, when the rubber meets the road, when he's up against the wall, he doesn't care about any of those things. He cares about making as much money as he can for himself and his investors. And that's what all these companies do. So to think that they're somehow woke, if they were really woke, they'd be reorganizing as worker-owned cooperatives.
And
if they were really
thinking about how they're sourcing their materials and
yeah,
their
right.
products.
And some of them do, or at least they try to. They'll get like rainforest certified coffee and all that sort of thing, which a lot of that is just greenwashed as well.
I mean,
but
Caribou does a nice job reusing their products and
okay, they're still putting out a lot of
they have really low waste,
plastic waste,
remarkably low waste.
Every one of those cups though, like those cups are not.
I think they switched to biodegradable cups.
Did they really? Well, okay, good for them if they did. But I think the plastic lids are still not biodegradable. But again,
all right, you're right.
The point is, when it comes down to it, what they want is to make money. So they will tweak little things if pressed. They will adhere to the law if they're really pressed, and like their employees want to unionize or whatever, and they can't stop it.
Hmm.
But they don't care really,
Right.
because like I just said, if they did, they would be reorganizing as worker-owned cooperatives, or they would at very least be doing some sort of employee profit share, or they would be like really giving good benefits and,
Mhm.
and good training program. Like they would do a hell of a lot more for their employees if they actually cared about any of the things they claim to care about.
Right. But for now, they're just cheap posturing.
Yeah, and that's what it is. And every leftist sees through this. I would imagine a great deal of liberals see through this as well. It's only the right wingers that pretend that this is an actual thing, because it can be something they actually focus on. Because you'll notice as we go through these videos, the right wing has no ideas. They don't have any ideas of how to make this world better. All they can do is squawk about how terrible the world is becoming because of Wokism
I
or Marxist postmark what is it, postmodern neo-Marxism, as Jordan Peterson puts it. Or
I feel like they just don't. They're not well informed on what's going on
I'm
in
sure
the
the
world,
average Republican voter is not, but I mean,
and they're not like admitting that there are these problems doesn't make them look good.
mhm.
And it's funny because there's so much on the left where it's like, if you just allowed these things to happen, you wouldn't have to partake.
Yeah, right.
Like, it wouldn't really impact you at all.
It's
In
like,
fact, it would benefit you if things were to go south and you lost your job or
sure, but
like,
even cultural stuff, like all the doomsday prophecies that were around legalizing gay marriage.
mhm.
No one hardly even talks about that anymore. Like it's just a non-issue. People get married.
Yep.
It doesn't really affect anyone. Oh, lo and behold, they just moved on to something else to complain about.
Right. Actually, the studies have shown that the allowing gay marriage has boosted the marriage industry because it's boosted divorce.
And in fact,
It's boost.
well, divorce has gone down since legalizing gay marriage as well. For all their talk about how half of marriages end in divorce. Well, for one thing, have you ever known a good marriage that ended in divorce? So maybe it's not such a bad thing that bad marriages are ending, for one thing.
Mhm.
But even beyond that, the divorce rate has gone down in past decades. So
Really? I thought it was still.
yeah, let's look at U.S. divorce rate. Let's take a quick sidebar on that, because it's just one of those other things that the right loves to squawk about without really knowing anything about it, and without ever offering any solution other than, well, everyone should just be religious.
And everybody should have kids.
Oh boy, I'm not typing very well.
Need help?
I need thinner fingers, my fat fingers over here.
It's okay. All fingers are good fingers.
Thank you. Here we go. November 10th, 2020, divorce rate, U.S. divorce rate has hit a 50-year low.
Is that because of COVID, though? I'm just kidding.
I don't know. I think if anything, being stuck together would probably have pushed that number up. But look at this. I'll even share this tab for a second here. U.S. divorce rate fell to a 50-year low in 2019. So here we have 1960. What is that number on the side? I don't know. What is that percentage? What are we looking at? I'm not quite sure. But anyway, you can see the line goes up until 1980. That was the peak of divorce rates. And it's been on a steady decline ever since 1980, with a more sharp decline developing around 2009. Probably not not coincidentally, because that was around the time that states started legalizing gay marriage.
Mhm.
And then it's just been a pretty general drop to where it's at now. So they're not even right on the things that they talk about. So this one here shows the number of newly married people per 1,000 unmarried population, age 15 plus. So you can see that people have been getting married at a later age. That's what this graph shows. And hey, consequently,
I think that's
number of newly
smarter.
divorced people per 1,000. I agree too, because like you're not even mentally mature until you're like 24, 26, something
Mhm.
like that. So yeah.
I mean, and I got married at 35,
Mhm.
and you had already been
I'd already been
married
married
and
once.
divorced.
And yeah, I admit I got into a marriage that I probably never should have.
I'm not
But
trying to shame you. I'm
no,
just
no, no,
saying,
obviously
like,
not. But thank goodness there's divorce available to me. Otherwise, I'd still be stuck in that marriage now, and
mhm.
even more miserable. Well, I'm not miserable now, but I would be even more miserable than I was when I got divorced.
He's so miserable. You guys don't
No,
even know.
I know I'm super happy, as you can see every time Amanda's on the stream. Yeah.
Happy.
Let's go back to that tab here. So they have nothing. All they can do is complain about things that are usually non-issues if you actually look into it.
Mhm.
But they don't ever offer any solutions other than everyone should be Christian, everyone should, and we should just have traditional family roles. That's their answer for everything. Traditional family roles.
But you can't. Capitalism doesn't support that because
Well, for sure.
realistically, in most homes now, you cannot afford to have a parent that's a stay-at-home
Hmm.
unless your husband's a lawyer.
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
or the dad, you know.
Mhm.
Woman usually doesn't make enough to support.
Yeah.
I know I don't.
Well, and even back in the day, when there were good union jobs, there would be some, working class people that could afford to have a stay-at-home parent, but a lot of them still couldn't.
Hmm.
A lot of the lowest paying jobs, especially during, say, the robber baron era, our least regulated era of capitalism. This golden age that people like Dennis Prager unironically want to go back to. Yeah, no one could afford to stay at home except for the very rich at that point.
Right, and you can only have so many lawyers, so many doctors,
Right.
so many.
In fact, at that point, the solution to what to do with kids was to put them in the factory with the parents. That's how they got around that issue. Kids would go to work at 5, 8 years old.
Mhm.
Um,
I got a tap.
oh, okay.
Stomach issues.
That's totally
Sorry.
fine. Yeah, whatever. Totally fine. Thanks for joining
We
me.
got 2 minutes into a video.
I know. We got halfway through.
One video.
But
an
I mean, it's
hour.
good that these videos are so short. Thanks for joining me. Hope
Yeah.
to see you back. If you.
Sorry,
That's okay.
I have tummy troubles.
You don't
guys.
you don't gotta explain. It's
Yeah,
fine.
I do.
You're fine.
Ain't no one on right now.
So you definitely don't have to explain.
Still want to.
Okay. Well, anyway, thanks for joining.
Yeah. What?
And we will see you on future videos. But let's get back into this PragerEwww.
playbook, and they followed it to a T. The new bad guys, big tech, could become the good guys just like the banks, as long as they made sure the next election went the right way. That is the way the new left wanted it to go.
To Biden? The new left wanted Biden to win? Is that really what he's putting forward here? Who is even enthusiastic about Biden? I don't think I had a single family member or friend or distant acquaintance who ever was super enthusiastic about Biden, even more than lukewarm about him. How is this the new left's favored candidate? That's absolutely ridiculous. If anything, the left wanted Bernie, and the Democratic Party crushed their hopes of that systematically. Barack Obama convinced everyone to drop out at a critical time, except for Biden, and then all throw their support around Biden. So all those other moderates that were splitting the moderate vote up dropped out at a critical time just before Super Tuesday, and then also Biden got the blessing of Jim Clyburn of South Carolina, I want to say. Anyway, a Democratic bigwig, and he swung that entire state for Biden, and then the momentum shifted. So the new left wanted Bernie, but they got screwed over by the Democratic Party. So how this fits into some grand plan of the left is still beyond me. I don't understand where he's even coming from, and how big tech is selecting the president. I mean, there was accusations of Russian meddling in the first election with Trump, um, and there were some Democrats who really went all in on that without having much evidence. But I don't know, to say that it was just handed to him by big tech. I don't remember that even being an argument at the time, and I don't remember it being an argument that the big tech should somehow select Biden instead. And how this even plays into woke is like these are all just loosely thought of things. Like I don't. He's not even connecting how they would even fit together. What does this have to do with big business being woke? As if like saying Black Lives Matters enough would swing the election towards Biden if big tech did that, or what? Like, where's the connection here? This is just such a poorly put together argument. But I guess that's why it's 5 minutes, because it just flies at you as a conservative. You hear the thing that you want to hear, and then you move on with your day and parrot it at the bar later on as you're coping with the job that you hate with your friends.
In exchange, big tech would get to keep its monopoly power intact. And that's the untold story.
How is the left bargaining with big tech to keep it a monopoly power? Were there threats of breaking up? I mean, I assume by big tech he means like Facebook and Twitter. Were there threats of breaking up these companies if they didn't toe the Democratic line? Like, where is he pulling this from? This argument makes absolutely no sense. It is not even loosely associated things that he's trying to somehow pull together.
Of how modern big tech censorship worn. The newly ascendant left was able to delegate its dirty work to private companies to do through the back door what it could not do through the front door under the Constitution.
Remember now, Trump was not banned from Twitter until far after he had lost the election. It took the January 6th insurrection for him to finally be banned on Twitter. So they were still bending over backwards, even though he was daily breaking terms of service, spreading misinformation about medical stuff from basically the beginning of the pandemic. Where is this collusion to oust right wingers? Like they go out of their way to keep these people on the platform. Just because a few people got banned eventually after trying a half-hearted coup, that's not proof of big tech doing the dirty work and pulling the strings to win an election. This is absolutely ridiculous.
Namely, to censor protected political speech.
Inciting insurrection is supposed to be protected political speech. Spreading medical misinformation that got a lot of people killed is protected political speech. I mean, apparently it was, because it took some really big things happening for a lot of these people to finally get booted. But what? This is just such vague complaining.
Then came COVID and the death of George Floyd.
Wait a minute.
Woke Inc.
I thought they were okay. He's jumping all over the place. He's like they influenced the next election, but then came COVID and the death of George Floyd. What is going
became
on?
the woke industrial complex. Now it's not just Wall Street and Silicon Valley playing the game, but nearly all of corporate America as we know it.
Even the helicopter rides, is that what that's supposed to represent? What is going on here?
Coca-Cola trains its employees how to be less white.
Oh, here we go. So we have a few people that in order to cover their ass and check the box that yes, our employees have gotten sensitivity training, they hire these questionable people that go into corporate offices and say you should be less white and stuff like that, which I don't think, again, any leftists got behind, but okay. That's somehow evidence of this giant behind the scenes. I don't get it. Like, where's the cause coming from? Where's the causal link here between corporations being woke and influencing politics? How does giving a presentation at a corporate thing that sure is a little bit cringe, how does that influence the broader culture to vote in a certain way? These threads, they don't even come close to entwining at all. This is absolutely nonsense.
And issues public statement laws that make it sound more like a super PAC than a soft drink manufacturer.
Are we going to reference those? Do we got any links down here? Any citations? Let's take a look. No, join PragerEwww. Wokism is the system. We got the script. Sure. Complete transcript. Nope, no citation. So we'll just leave that at citation needed.
Pay no attention to the fact that its drinks are a major contributor to the obesity epidemic,
which the right was losing their mind about when, who was it? Was it Bloomberg wanted to have like a soda tax or do away with the largest size soda? Was it Bloomberg? Was it? I don't know. Some New York politician wanted to do away with soda. The right lost their mind about it. Oh, this is the death of choice and free speech and blah, blah, blah. Now they're apparently for that because they're linking Coca-Cola to the obesity epidemic. Again, are they proposing any solutions here? No.
especially in the Black community. Nike condemns,
Especially in the Black community. Well, why would that be? Could it be because high fructose corn syrup is a highly subsidized sweetener, so it's ubiquitous in everything from soda to a lot of common foods like bread? Could that be why? Are they going to talk about getting rid of grain subsidies for these highly processed and refined foods that are basically sugar or almost sugar? No, of course not. Because that would be an actual way to try and solve these problems, to make the cheapest food, not the food that's worst for you.
systemic racism in the United States and donates tens of millions of dollars to Black Lives Matter, while it's
How do they donate to Black Lives Matter? Like, what branch of the organization? Who is it going to? And even if they did, so
still relies on slave labor in Asia to make $200 sneakers that they sell to Black kids.
which you also don't care about. The right doesn't care at all about slave labor or sweatshop conditions. They want to have cheap products. Are you advocating against slave labor? Are you trying to figure out ways to stop it? Are you wanting to sanction Nike for getting their products that way? No, they're not putting any of these things forward.
In the inner city who can't afford to buy books for school.
Oh, so much dog whistling here. It's hard to even keep up.
It's the magic trick of the 21st century. Distract the public with its virtue over here,
Or distract the public with a bunch of nonsense, non-issues about society and wokeness and stuff like that, so you can distract from the fact that you have no real solutions or ideas of making the world better. Not once in this entire video has he mentioned how to make any of this stuff better, or if these things are bad, which he's signaling that some of these things, slave labor, subsidizing of cheap, bad for you foods, he's signifying that he's indicating these are bad. What does he say? What is the Republican solution to these problems?
while doing awful but highly profitable things over there.
Yeah, that's capitalism for you. I mean, if you really want to make things better, maybe we should start by doing away with the systems that profit the most from these sorts of exploitative practices, such as capitalism.
Including in places like China, where companies like Disney, Nike, Apple, BlackRock, and the NBA regularly support a brutal regime while continuing to decry social injustice here at home.
Okay, so sure, yeah, that's pretty hypocritical. I mean, to say that China is somehow a more brutal regime than the United States, I don't think so. They have more repressive free speech laws. At the same time, everyone has health care. at the same time, they handled the pandemic so well that they lost about 1,000 people out of 1 billion, and the U.S. is now just past 1 million because of COVID. So the place where the virus actually started has only lost 1,000 people, maybe a couple thousand, where the U.S. has lost 1 million. So repressive and brutal, that's kind of a hard sell. And sure, you can point to the Uyghurs and their bad treatment of them, and you probably have some really you could probably be right in doing so. You could also point to the U.S. and the immigrants that are trying to seek asylum that are still being regularly detained for indefinite periods or deported. Or I think Biden has ended child separation, but that's about all he's done. There's still kids in cages. There's still a lot of really horrible things going on in the United States as well. So in the who's the worst brutal regime, I don't know. Unless we're just going on absolute free speech, then I would say that probably the US is worse, especially when we look at the entire reach of the brutal and repressive things we do to other countries around the world, often in the name of supporting these companies that are now bad according to the right wing. I don't know.
Big business wins.
And again, so you're criticizing them for supporting social justice, but then or for giving lip service to social justice, but then not engaging in it. Does that mean we should support social justice and actually mean it? And wait, but at the same time, he was criticizing them for giving money, which would be actual real support to Black Lives Matter. So it seems like they can't win either way. If they actually support the causes that they claim to, then they're unduly manipulating the culture. And if they just give lip service, but then they do the opposite, well, then they're hypocrites. And either way, we shouldn't get behind them or support anything they do. But it's also not good to support social justice issues. Like it's such a garbled mess of ideas that I don't know how anyone swallows this stuff. I don't know how this has gotten almost 500,000 views, although it's only gotten 5,500 upvotes. Don't know about dislikes because that's not shown. And I guess when you look at they have 3 million subscribers, if only about 1 out of 6 have actually watched this video, and it's only a 5-minute video, I guess that doesn't speak too well for PragerEwww either. So maybe people don't buy this stuff that they're putting out there. It's still fun to make fun of them.
Woke activists win. The Chinese Communist Party wins.
Do they win?
But Americans
Do they win by being exploited? How does the Chinese Communist Party win by the US doing business with them, which hurts are they saying that hurt? It seemed like they were saying that hurts somehow the Chinese people, but the Communist Party somehow wins? I don't follow at all what he's trying to say. Americans lose, though. Okay.
lose. We lose because when corporations cynically enforce speech codes and mandate how we act.
So speech codes, otherwise known as terms of service, which, I mean, just from a pure business standpoint, it's hard to argue against having a code of conduct for using a particular service where you can talk to other people and not have any codes. Like, should it just be absolute free speech? Because I don't think the right would like that either. That's what leads to things like 4chan and even worse, 8chan, where you have huge problems with, people harming children and dealing drugs openly and doing all the things that the Republicans, I mean, obviously hurting children, that's a terrible thing. And then Republicans should support that and do, being against that. But they would clutch their pearls if free speech meant open drug dealing and people being mean to them, because they certainly don't like it when people are mean to them. They completely crumple. They cry that they're being oppressed because people are saying mean things when they say mean things, and like But sure, what's the solution? So if they shouldn't have these speech codes, if their terms of service are curtailing free speech, and you really want to make that case, what's the solution? Is that more regulation from the government? Because it doesn't seem like they'd be for that, because they don't want government intervention. Is it nationalizing things? Because that would mean that the government would be actively a part of running and monitoring all social media. So all the stuff is going to the government, all of your metadata that goes along with being online on these platforms. What really is their solution? How do they want to force these companies to not have these speech codes? I don't know. I doubt they're ever going to stay.
And think, we lose the most fundamental freedom of all, freedom of speech. We're forced to choose between speaking our minds and putting food on the dinner table.
What? What? Who is not able to make money because they got banned on Twitter or Facebook? What? Are they alluding to people that get doxxed because they say really awful, horrible things to people, and then people tell their employers? Is that where they're going with this? Because if how would that change if you had more loose free speech regulations? That would just give them more opportunity to say horrible things that then the people on those platforms would still be able to go to their employer with and get them fired. How is it an either or? I mean, if it's just like if I'm I don't understand. How would there not be consequences? How would there be less consequences for speaking your mind if you were more able to speak your mind and you were saying those same awful things that people get fired for? Because that's all I can think that they're alluding to is the people get doxxed to their employer and then lose their jobs because it becomes a liability. How would that be less? People are saying more horrible stuff. Um, so where's really the choice? The choice is internally. Do I say this horrible thing that someone might use against me, or do I not? Because what it seems like he's really alluding to now is that there should just be no consequences for saying horrible things. Which, how do you regulate that? How do you stop people from doxing people that say horrible things to their employer? Like on their Twitter profile, if they can somehow track down where they work, how would you regulate against them then telling the employer, "Hey, look at what your employee says"? This is bizarre world. I don't There's too many contradictions to even keep in your head at the same time. I guess that's it. It's just supposed to wash all over you. You don't think about it much, and then you just go say to your friends, "Well, we gotta choose between speaking our mind or putting food on the table. Can you believe it?" And then their friend gets outraged, and they don't really know why, but like I guess what they're complaining more is just a social thing. It's like not even rules and regulations. It's just the soft power of social influence from strangers on the internet. And I don't see what they're proposing as an alternative.
So how do we stop them?
Okay,
Well, you've
here we go. Here's the solution to all of these contradictory problems that we've laid out.
already taken a big first step. You now know how the magic trick works. So when a woke corporation
yeah.
tells you how virtuous they are, just laugh and take your business elsewhere.
Okay. Sure. What if you find out that a food company um is doing this virtue signaling? Where are you going to take your business elsewhere? Let's look at the network of food companies. Um, you can find a map of that. Let's see. All right. We're not going to find a bigger one. Uh, we'll share this tab. This is good enough. Okay, here's who owns food companies and food brands. So you're going to the grocery store, and oh boy, PepsiCo is really put their foot in it this time. They've come out in support for Black Lives Matter. Okay, what are you going to buy instead? Coca-Cola? Okay, now Coke has said something. Or Coke, he already denounced Coke for their training. So I guess you just out soda. Maybe there's some more soda brands in the breakdown here. But as you can see, there's what, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. There are 10 companies that control probably 90% or more of the food that you consume, the products you're going to see in any given grocery store or gas station, wherever it is that you get your food. So if one of them pisses you off, where are you going to go? I mean, I guess with cereal, General Mills pisses you off, you got Kellogg's, but then what if Kellogg's pisses you off? And you're kind of out of luck. They own everything in terms of cereal, it looks like. It's hard to, I can't really zoom in on this. Well, maybe I can, but it doesn't really matter. You have a handful of options in any of these cases of alternatives. So what if they all go woke? Are you just going to grow your own food entirely? Are you going to just, most people can just go live off grid. They just don't have the resources to do so, or the land, or the know-how, or any of the things that it would take to actually produce 100% of the products that you make. And that's just food. So um, there are similar infographics for basically everything. Now, let's go back to there. Let's look at other companies. Let's see if we can find an image infographic of that. Who owns Big Pharma? Let's take a look at that. Okay, so this is Big Pharma, Big Media, that sort of thing. We have a handful of companies. Bank of America, I didn't know they were such a big player in all that. 3G Capital, some of these I haven't heard of, but most of them are going to be pretty familiar. Vanguard, that's a huge company. JP Morgan, gigantic company. BlackRock, a huge, huge company. What do you do if if any one of these pisses you off and says the wrong woke thing? Where are you going to go? I mean, for your banking, you got what? Yeah, is ING even? Do they even own banks, or is it just financial? I don't even know exactly what they do. But you have Bank of America, you have Wells Fargo. You got a couple of choices. You can take all your monies out of the bank, all your money out of the bank. I mean, you have to have some sort of a bank account, but you can put it all into stocks. Well, I mean, you got Goldman Sachs, you got JP Morgan. There's only a couple of options there. I know BlackRock owns a bunch of financial institutions. Vanguard and BlackRock. Well, it looks like they own a whole lot of stuff. A whole lot of stuff. Now, though, I'm not sure how credible this website is, but I'm sure it's not far off the mark. The point is, there's only a few companies that own any given commodity. So if you're mad at one, you really don't have many viable options. So for all the supposed options that capitalism gives you, the consumer choice, the ability to, take your business elsewhere, as they're advocating here, that's all just kind of empty and meaningless when only a handful of companies own virtually everything. So that's a pretty piss poor solution. Let's see what else you got.
And then stand up for your constitutional, God-given rights. And if they try to take those away,
Okay. Slight disagreement there. The Constitution is not nowhere. I don't think it even mentions God. Declaration of Independence, but that's not a legally binding document. But Constitution, it does not say that rights are given from God. But that aside, okay, take those rights away, then sue them. Okay, average American, you probably have thousands of dollars to or millions of dollars. I mean, you're gonna take on one of these giant corporations. You need to have millions of dollars, and probably decades of your life to devote to hiring a legal team, keeping them employed, and fighting these fights against these giant companies. That's really the best you got. Sue the companies if they support the things. What would you even sue? So Coca-Cola has a training program that you think is based on CRT. What are you going to sue them for? Um, or Twitter bans you. Are you going to sue Twitter? Like you and the boys down at the bar, you can get to pull your money and sue Twitter for banning you. They'll point to their TOS. That's it. Because guess what? Capitalism backs up the rights of property owners first and foremost. So Twitter being a capitalist company, owning, even though it's virtual space, owning the servers that virtual space takes place on, owning the code and the intellectual property that goes into using, maintaining Twitter, and having those terms of service. They'll point to that and your case will be dismissed. So, wow. What did I say earlier? The right does not have a single solution that's viable for any of this stuff. And here we are. Solutions. Take your money to another of the 2 or 3 companies that own the things that you're trying to buy, or sue them. That's what we have so far.
Sue them. I'm Vivek Ramaswamy,
That was
author
it.
of Woke Inc.
That's
Inside
it.
Corporate
Those are the
America's social
solutions.
justice scam
Those are the
for
solutions.
Prager University. Thank you.
Sue them or take your business elsewhere. Both of those things, by the way, take money to do, because you have to have the money to, assuming you're buying a product because it's the cheapest product, you then have to have some extra money if you're going to, for moral reasons, take your money elsewhere. You have to have the money to do so. So that already is out of the reach of a lot of people that have to buy the cheapest of everything because they make minimum wage, or close to it. I mean, hell, I make over 3 times minimum wage, and I still got not much money left over at the end of each month. So I can only imagine what people that are much closer to that minimum wage are struggling with. They're struggling to get housing. You think they're going to have time to sue people? I guess PragerEwww. I think their target audience is more like the petty bourgeoisie, the small business owners. So sure, maybe those people do have the money to sue like a person in town if they break a contract with them at their local business. Or if they're a landlord, sue their tenant to get them evicted. They don't got money to take on Twitter or Facebook or any of these giant companies. Wow. But I guess that's it. You have some weak, ineffectual solutions that you put forward, so you can at least pretend that you care about these issues and that you actually want to solve them. And then you call it a day. You've achieved outrage in your audience, and you move on. Wow, that was so incoherent, though. So don't support the companies that want social justice, but then do business with China because China doesn't believe in social justice. But then the companies back home giving money to social justice organizations should also be opposed, or that do trainings that smack of social justice. We should also oppose those too. It's just so contradictory. And I talk to these fans sometimes. I follow PragerEwww on Facebook. It's fun to argue with them about stuff. And it's just like the guy says, they come up with these really weak ass solutions to things. Like you criticize capitalism. They're like, well, you just build a business. Oh, okay. I don't have money to do that. But even if I did, okay, so that's good for me. But then I have to have employees in order to make my business run and actually make money at it and get to a comfortable position in life. So that's just perpetuating the system for other people. And I'm just relying on the exploitation of others. And that's it. That's usually the end of the conversation because they don't really have anything beyond that. But what a sad organization. Let's watch some more. Ay. Let's see what else we got. We could look at more about taking on woking. Let's do something different. Let's pick a different topic. Oh, I see some people have followed as well. Thanks for the follow, Gonzo Mister and Kid Notkin. Thanks for the follows. We're just having some fun taking down PragerEwww. No big deal. Let's see, Israel. What would you do? That seems a bit heavier. I don't think I want to take that one on tonight. Keeping it light. So here we go. Big business, big problems. I bet that's going to be a kind of a rehash. Oh, here we go. How to end systemic racism. This one actually has a lot of views. I bet this is let's sort it. Let's sort it by views. I bet that's near the top because that's like almost half their people that have watched that one. How do I? I don't know. Anyway, we'll look at this one.
There is systemic racism in this country.
Oh boy. So what did I say? PragerEwww loves their tokens as much as they just in the last video railed against tokens while using a token minority to complain about social justice. Here we are again. How to end systemic racism. I bet you can guess what sort of person they're going to put in front of the camera this time to give themselves some moral cover from criticism.
And people of color are paying a terrible price because of it. The elites who have instigated this moral crime deserve to be exposed.
Oh, she's this Amala Ekpunobi. Excuse me. Amala Ekpunobi. I'm gonna guess that's about as close as I'm gonna get to it. Oh yeah, they do the she does a program with Will Witt, who's a completely brain dead moron. At least she seems to be like an intelligent person. And doesn't swallow all of their tripe completely. I've actually heard her push back against Will and their other co-host, who's just also just a knob. But yeah, why do you think they picked her to do this video?
For what they've done. The sooner we call attention to them, the sooner we expose their regressive ideas, the sooner we live in a more just society. No truth, no peace. Here's how bad it is. At Columbia University, Black students have a separate graduation from white students. In many other...
Wait. Cool. Let's see. Let's look up Columbia University. This, again, this is, classic PragerEwww fashion. They whip through a lot of facts, taken out of context completely. Not least of which, I think Columbia is a private institution, is it not? Private university in New York. Let's look up that idea. Separate graduation. Separate graduation. So this is from their own website. Put that up on the screen. Multicultural graduation celebrations. Well, okay, that's weird. In honor of Columbia's diverse student community and complementing the school and university-wide graduation celebrations, we are proud to also offer multicultural graduation celebrations, which provide a more intimate setting for students who self-identify in a variety of ways. Okay, so already that's not an absolute truth. It maybe appears they're separate white and Black graduations, but this one here is obviously not that. So they have an option. These events invite community members to reflect on personal growth and community experiences that have impacted their time as students through to graduation. All students are invited to participate in these celebrations. Okay. Okay, so the Lavender graduation celebration celebrates graduating LGBTQ and allied students. So these are celebrations, though. It does not say ceremony. Yeah, they have different graduation celebrations for people that identify in different ways. Does it say, does it even say you have to identify as any of these categories to participate? It just says it's recognized for, let's read the Asian one. Asian graduation celebration, not ceremony, is an annual celebration that recognizes the achievements of the graduating Asian, East Asian, South Asian, and Southeast Asian, and Pacific Islander communities on campus in collaboration with Asian Columbia Alumni Association. We honor the legacies of heritages, and histories. I mean, okay, the voices that have individually and collectively impacted the university and the invaluable work that's shared of shared strength and support among fellow Colombians, past and present. And it doesn't just say fellow Asian Colombians, it says fellow Colombians. Asian graduation is sponsored by the Multicultural Affairs undergraduate student life. Support is provided by blah, blah, blah. That doesn't say you have to be any of these categories to attend or participate in any way. But again, it is also a private institution. So, I mean, I guess they're just calling it out in general culturally, but private schools, I mean, oftentimes are the most regressive. So if it turns out it's as bad as they say for some reason, I guess I wouldn't even be that surprised, it being a private institution. But okay, so that was just the first one. So already wrong on one point.
Society. No truth, no peace.
Let's exactly what she
Here's how
said there.
bad it is. At Columbia University, Black students have a
Separate graduations, not true. Not true. From everything I can see so far, it appears they don't have separate graduations. Let's see, ceremonies. Oh, so here we go. Post misrepresent Columbia's multicultural graduation. Let's see what they have to say. So this is in 2021. It says they will supplement their regular graduation ceremony with multicultural ceremony. So maybe there's different ceremonies for more members of the Latinx. Latinx is a problematic term. Latina is definitely the more preferred one. It's kind of imposed on them, but that aside, Asian, Black, and other student communities who want to participate. Social media users are misrepresenting these voluntary ceremonies as segregation. So it's just a way to show the achievements of various different backgrounds of people. It is not saying that you have to attend one or the other. So yeah, Fox News, big surprise, reported that Columbia University is hosting 6 separate graduation ceremonies based on income level, race, and ethnicities. So I know that the university would also host a more general commencement ceremony. So these, yeah, again, it doesn't sound like these are actually the part where you stand up, there's speeches, you get your diploma, you walk on the stage, you do your little tassel thing, so on and so forth. It sounds like these are just celebrations afterward, or maybe before, but it doesn't really matter. It's not the main event. And it's just a way to highlight various achievements of these various communities that go there. Yeah. So yeah, on social media, it was described as segregated by race and sexual preference, and regressive, not progressive. Yeah. A white conservative content creator said, "This is disgusting. Congrats, society. We are so woke that we have segregation again." Yeah. So so here's what the person from the university says. Their spokesperson. Again, this is the reason we have to stop these videos so often, because they go real fast. They never cite a single source for any of these things. So they're aimed at people that already believe this stuff and are going to uncritically swallow it and just get outraged. That's the whole point. It's an outrage machine, not a thought machine. It's not. It's incredibly ironic that they call themselves Prager University, but even so. In fact, when's that PragerEwww ceremony going to come? Are they going to celebrate the multicultural backgrounds of their alumni? So anyway, the spokesperson says the smaller celebratory events held for particular communities are in addition to, not instead of, the main commencement and class day graduation ceremonies. In most instances, these smaller multicultural gatherings evolved from ceremonies originally created by alumni and students. The gatherings are voluntary, open to every student, kind of a big thing that they omitted there, who wants to participate, and have become a highly anticipated and meaningful part of Columbia's graduation. So this is just highlights reels of people that have come and graduated from this university and what they've gone on to do, and the various backgrounds that they have that they're celebrating. Whoa, it sounds like woke segregation to me. Just highlighting the achievements of traditionally marginalized people that are somehow or another connected to the university. So yeah, that's a bunch of nothing there. Let's see what else they got.
Separate graduation from white students.
So nope, that's
in many other
absolutely
colleges,
false.
Black students are encouraged to live in their own separate dorm.
Aha. So here's another thing. Okay. Imagine you are a smaller than average person, and because of this, you get beat up at school. Let's say you're in elementary school. Kids are very cruel. They pick on you for being small, and you are forced to be around your bullies all the time. You're always forced to interact with people that are trying to push you down, or just, they may not even be actively trying to do it, but just by their presence, you feel intimidated. Wouldn't you want to have a space away from that, um, away from the constant having to prove why you're there, prove yourself, prove your worth, all of this sort of thing? That is the idea behind race separated dorms for minorities, not for, I mean, they're not going to have a whites only dorm. That's not going to be a thing, because the point is to have a space for various minorities that just want to get away from constantly having to prove themselves and constantly having to answer to people challenging them for one thing or another, and just have a space where they can just be. That is the entire point of that. That's the entire point of things like women's centers and LGBTQIA centers, is just a space away from the normal fray. And of course, the white people always get, or some white people that don't really want to look at anything but how they're being oppressed, or how the left is being hypocritical. People that are only concerned with that sort of thing, they look at this stuff and they're like, well, they're just doing woke segregation again. But no, it's not segregation for the purpose of holding someone down, which that was entirely about what Jim Crow laws were about, what race-based slavery was about, all these about the Chinese Exclusion Act, about banning of interracial marriages. All of these sorts of policies and laws in the past were about holding down people that were not white and not male. That's why the founding, those glorious founding fathers that PragerEwww always likes to harken back to, also just kind of only wanted rich white landowning men to vote and nobody else ever, and thought slavery was cool. Half of them died still having slaves. So there's kind of a history of, in this country, people of color, various minorities, women included, being held back. At virtually every university, I mean, maybe this has changed now, but when I was in college, back in the aughts, it was the norm to have gender or gender segregated dormitories. So you'd have a floor of, I think maybe some, yeah. No, that's right. So you'd have a floor of only guys, you'd have a floor of only women, on and on like that. No one ever thought a thing about it. There weren't these conservatives complaining about how that was woke segregation, stuff like that. And there was never really a problem with that either. And even on the co-ed floors, you would only ever have a room with 2 men or 2 women in it. And again, I'm sure it comes from the same sort of idea that if you had a woman and a man in the same dorm room, that woman might feel a little intimidated coming into a space with someone who is on average going to be stronger than them, on average going to college with all sorts of expectations about hookup culture and whatnot. So there's legitimate reasons to have concerns about putting people in dangerous or awkward positions. The same is true here in this sort of thing, and this is not even a common thing, but they'll take any little cherry picked statistic. Let's look at race segregated dorms. Um, that's probably not even how they word it in places that do it. Oh, okay. First result is the Daily Mail, so you know that it's probably there's probably some legitimacy to that story. Let's see if there's anyone that actually wants to explain what the reasoning behind this sort of thing. Because I seriously doubt this is even a commonplace thing on college campuses. But let's hear some of the reasons. This is from the Black Enterprise. I'm going to assume that they're going to at least present this in a charitable light. So this says Western Washington University, a small school located south of Seattle, has created segregated housing on its campus specifically for Black students. So here's one of the things that this Amala is talking about. Western Washington, located about 90 miles south of Seattle, has designated the fourth. Actually, we'll share this tab instead, so you can read along with me. The let's see, the fourth floor. So one single floor of Alma Clark Glass Hall for the Black Affinity Housing Program. Building, it's named for the first Black person to attend Western Washington. The program will explore and celebrate the diversity of Black and African American people and culture with historical and contemporary context. The program's website states, also saying that Western students residing in the program help foster a warm and vibrant community, supporting social, personal, and academic success. Okay, so this is for people that for a long time would have been legally kept out of a lot of these universities. It doesn't say what the year was that that first Black student was to attend, but it's taking people that are from traditionally marginalized backgrounds and giving them a space where they'll see people that at least share some of their experience. In this case, as a Black person, in a situation where they're probably away from home for the first time ever, trying to make their way and figure out how they fit into the college situation can be a very intimidating thing for anybody. Um, but I bet there's an added bit of that to people that are from historically um, marginalized and oppressed groups that continue to be marginalized and oppressed to this day. So the idea is just to give them a place where they can share their experiences, support one another, where the people that they're going to be interacting with the most on a daily basis are going to at least have an idea of where they're coming from, having shared a at least a portion of their background. It's not. I don't know what they're even alluding to the purpose of this for, and I seriously doubt the way that she's whipping through these examples that she's going to give any context of any kind to that. But like, what do they think the purpose of this is? I mean, probably because they're conservatives. Anytime they see anybody being treated um, in any way that's different, they assume that that means that person is going to be held up above white people. So that's probably where they're coming from, but I seriously doubt that they're going to go into that. They're just going to allude to it. But anyway, Black affinity housing residents represent all diverse identities, pride themselves in fostering a sense of belonging for all residents by creating a safe environment for open, honest, and sometimes challenging dialogue. Again, these are the people you're going to interact with most. That's just how it is living in a dorm. So I'm guessing, did they say it was for first years as well? I don't know. I would assume it'd be something like for people, for first year students, for freshmen incoming, to just give them an extra bit of support. Whereas white people, have a much greater chance of being supported their entire life up to that point, by their communities, by their families, so on and so forth. The Black students, on average, are going to have not as many of those support structures just naturally in place. So this just gives them an extra little bit of support, integrating into a new situation for them. So here we go. Black students on white campuses have dealt with numerous issues in recent years while attending PWIs, that is predominantly white institutions. So yeah, it says it's just to make them feel more comfortable at a predominantly white institution. So this college itself is predominantly white. This is just one place where it's, again, the same purpose as a women's center, as an LGBTQIA center. It's just a place where marginalized or often marginalized people can just have a space to support one another, where they don't have to worry about constantly having their identity called into question, their reasons for being there called into question. They don't have to constantly field questions of, oh, were you just a affirmative action acceptee to this institution, which is absolutely ridiculous because that's not how affirmative action works. It does not ever give you an extra advantage. It only says if you have one of these categories that have been historically held back from getting into institutions of higher learning, everything else being equal, your test scores, your background, everything, your extracurriculars, all the other things that go into your essay for getting into college, all those other things being equal, then we can go ahead and consider that you have a historically underrepresented identity. And that could be anything, because guess what? Guess who benefits most from affirmative action? White women, because guess who else has been historically uh, uh, repressed from attending college? Women. White women having more opportunity on average to even get to a point where they can get into a college, on average having gone to more well-funded schools up through high school, so then having more opportunities to build those extracurriculars, those other things, to actually have time and space to plan for the SAT or the ACT, all these other advantages that tend to still go to white people more often, of course, because being a woman is one of those protected categories, or one of those ones that can be considered, all things else being equal, the people in the best position to go to college, which on average is still going to be white people, um, white women still being a minority within white people in terms of power, they are more likely to get that advantage of affirmative action. But of course, they only make it about race. They pretend that it's all these people getting into these institutions that don't deserve to be there, when that's absolutely never the case. There's not been a single person who has had affirmative action considered for their acceptance who hasn't met the standards for admittance to any college. It does not happen because that's not how it works. Anyway, that's getting beside the point. So here we just have a place, one floor of one university in this case, where people that may have felt marginalized by uh, uh, being around white people, people that may be nervous or feel intimidated by going to a predominantly white school, can have a place where at least they know that the people have shared some of their experiences by having their same racial identity. That's it. There's no nefarious plot to put them above and beyond the position of white people. There's no other reason other than extra support for traditionally marginalized people. That is the purpose of these sorts of things. Let's see if she gives that context, though. I'm kind of going to bet that she doesn't.
Students in many New York City government schools are separated by color during the school year.
And yep, she blew right by it. She acted as though they're being forced to be separated. Again, when these are just resources available to certain people with certain marginalized backgrounds. It's not as though having a women's center means that men can never be on campus or come around the women's center. I knew plenty of guys who volunteered with the women's center when I was in college, and the LGBTQI Center, who were not themselves any of those identities. They're very accepting spaces in general, but they also provide space that is free from the pressures of living in a society that looks down upon you for one reason or another. But she makes it seem as though they're being forced to separate. This is a voluntary floor on this one college, and I'm guessing that you could look at any sort of institution that's done this. I bet you 100%, 9 times out of 9, that's going to be the same case. It's for the purpose of supporting traditionally marginalized people and nothing more. No one is being forced into these areas. No one is being, they're not segregating the entire student body. It's at most like a floor in a dorm. It's like they had, they would often have like a psychology floor where all the psychology majors, you had to be in a psychology major to get onto that floor. Same sort of thing. I mean, it's not exactly the same because it's not based on an oppressed background. It's all these people are going to take your same classes. Here's a way for you to support one another through school. It's for the purpose of support, mutual support. You all have the same. You have this one thing in common. You're a major. Let's put you into a place where you can work better together and support each other. Same thing with racially segregated, which is a really terrible way to put it because I mean, are they going to check people's IDs before they enter the floor? Probably not. I would imagine plenty of white people visit this black floor. It's absolutely ridiculous to characterize this as any kind of segregation. Scale goes up to 11. Oh, I should have known. This is not pre-recorded. Why do you think it's pre-recorded? No, I didn't know you've been. I've been focused on the video, so I did not know you've been commenting. Oh boy, there's been a bunch of comments. I'm sorry I missed all these. Sorry for that. Turn off the time limit for commenting so I can raid. I want to raid, but also waiting 10 minutes to comment will make people leave. Sorry, that's just my policy. That helps keep out trolls. So I do make people wait when they're first time uh, followers of this stream. I do make them wait 10 minutes before they can comment. You can't hear me though. Sorry. Oh, can't hear you though. Thumbs up if you can do that, please. I'm sorry. I didn't know that you had said all that stuff. So what was that mark? I'm not seeing. That's strange. It's not, the timestamp is not lining up. So sorry I didn't catch these comments before. I was just in the video discussing it. It's not pre-recorded. Turn what off? I don't know. Do I spend 50% of my time railing for more women in sewage works too? I mean, to be fair, yeah, 100% of women who want to work in sewage works should be able to work in sewage works. Absolutely. So I drift through these topics with only one side of analysis. Right. Because PragerEwww is offering the other side of analysis, if you want to call it that. Sure. For example, women get to go to college with no regard for I was brought up by strangers. What does that mean? I don't know what that means. Sorry. It's not pre-recorded. I'm also on YouTube. You can follow me on YouTube as well. Okay. I'm speaking like a background NPC, talking for 15 minutes. Yeah, sorry I was going on a side tangent. The parenting thing. What is the parenting thing? Raised by strangers? What does that mean? With no parents in the home, who brings up the child? Who has no parents in the home? What the hell are you even on about? Oh, and you're a viable clan member. So I should use that too as the context of where you're gonna have to spell it out, my friend, because I have no idea. Who has no parents in the home? What are you talking about? People that are raised by their grandparents? Sure. Who is that? What are we talking about? I don't understand where you're coming from. Two parents go out to work. Cool. Yeah, that's an unfortunate reality of our system. Okay, think. I'm trying to think, but I'm also trying to comprehend what you're trying to say. You're kind of just vaguely gesturing at things. So you're railing against two parents having to work. Okay, sure. Um, that's bad. We should have free childcare. That's an important thing to do. We should value the upbringing of children and their well-being. So sure, that would be a way to solve that. We should have much more resources for people. People should have their basic needs met so that they don't have to necessarily have two parents going to work. Okay, yeah, that's okay. Um, let's see. Was I put in daycare? No, I never had daycare. I had preschool. I was never put in daycare, but daycare is a fine place full of, hopefully people that love the children that they care for. It's a chance for children to develop social skills, learn to interact with others. Um, Still, what are you getting at? What's the problem here, and how are you proposing to solve whatever problem it is you're vaguely gesturing at? I get that you think daycare is bad, but why? And what are you proposing instead? Oh, okay, I'll let you think about that. Let's get back to the video because sorry, but it takes a while to address these things that she is whipping through quite quickly without citation, without giving any context to. So, okay, students and men in New York City government schools are separated by color during the school year. Is she going to say why? What the context is? What is she even talking
Here.
about?
State government.
No citation. Apparently, I'm not asking you to type 500 words. I'm asking you to just tell me where you're coming from. Level of thought I put in is vastly less than me typing it all, so you understand it. Okay. What do you want me to do here, bud? I'm not just gonna divine your point of view or whatever it is you're thinking. If you want me to understand where you're coming from, what point you're getting at, what solutions you're talking about, you have to type it out. I don't know what's in your head. You seem to have a problem with daycare, which okay. If you want to have an alternative to daycare, if you want a parent to be able to stay home, that's fine. Stop espousing my opinions until I can think it through for more than 15 minutes. No, I think I'll do what I want to do. This is my stream, but thanks for the advice. Okay. You are against daycare. You seem to want to have a stay-at-home parent, which is fine. That's a fine thing to want for early childhood care. That's cool. What's the way we get there? Because it's either going to have to be you raise wages quite a lot, or you just give people the basics of life so that they can choose whether to stay home and raise their child or to have a career, whichever they choose to do, without struggling to make ends meet. I have a woolly view of the way the world should be with no prior experience. I have 40 years of prior experience of how the world works. Okay. Okay. You can do whatever you want to as well, viable clan member. Slash taxes is the solution? Do you think that okay. Maybe things work differently in the UK, but do you have any idea how much income someone would be losing out in the US if they were to not go to work and be a stay-at-home parent? Um, sure, you pay 50% and both parents work, so remove that 50%. Okay, I don't know the breakdown of a UK tax bracket. Okay, you're just saying stuff before I even have a chance to respond. I'm not mad, bro. I'm trying to understand what you're trying to say. Okay. Um, I don't know where to go from here. What you think that slashing taxes is going to be enough for a parent to stay home? Okay. What if that parent? I mean, you live in the UK, so assumedly some of that 50% income tax goes to healthcare. Are you going to take away healthcare at the same time? Are you going to take away other social services with that slashing of taxes? Okay, I have offered my own. Here's my solution. If you want to stay home as a parent, you should be able to. Um, that shouldn't be a problem because every person in every country should have the basics. Here it is. Why don't you take a second and listen and stop typing? Everyone should have their basics met. That's it. Food, transportation, shelter, healthcare, justice. These things should be provided to everybody, regardless of what job they have, regardless of, yeah, Star Trek. We can have that sort of thing right now. We make more than enough of all of that stuff in order for everyone to have it. There's no shortage of any of that in the world. We have the technology. We can do it. Yeah, we should have the basics met. And that way, anyone who decides to stay home and be a parent, both parents could stay home. Wouldn't that be great if you had both parents staying home in a given house? Commies can barely build a tank. What commies are building tanks right now? Doesn't matter. We can have that in any of these societies, any place in the world. We make enough stuff. We have enough stuff. We can do that stuff right now. So that's my solution. What is your counter to that? Just slashing taxes as though that would put enough money in most people's pockets. So like taxes in the US right now, I've probably put in enough towards my taxes that I'm not going to have to pay any extra when tax season comes up. That's a solution. No, that's a solution that we can do now. Which of those things do we not have enough of? Housing? We got more than enough housing. Food? We waste 40% of food that is produced. A lot of it just because of reasons of logistics and price. Yeah, we as a people, as a species, we waste 40% of food. That's a fact. Okay. It's not really me that owns these resources, is it? What does it matter who owns it? These can be procured. They can be bought by people or the government or whatever. It doesn't really matter. We produce enough. The question is distribution. So what does it matter who owns it? Anyway, more than enough of all of this stuff is produced right now. It's only a matter of distributing it to everybody and getting getting beyond things like, you can't get a good enough price on your particular food product that you're growing, so you dump it because you have to. Instead, why not send in it could even be a government service vehicle. I know that sounds pretty scary to you. It could be a government vehicle that could go and pick up all that milk that's unsellable, and you could at least give the farmer something for it. We can do all these things already. I don't know what really is the problem with what I'm saying. We produce more than enough for everybody. Why shouldn't everybody get enough to live on? Why should there be people struggling on any of this? Raise taxes to 75% for the richest? Absolutely. Sounds good to me. Taxes used to be as high as 90% for the highest income bracket in the US. That's when things were better in terms of the average worker. The poor today have iPhones. What does it matter if you have an iPhone if you don't have health insurance? What does it matter if you have an iPhone if you are getting kicked out of your apartment because you can't make rent this month? These are small, relatively small one-time purchases. Oh, we have whiz-bang technology. Big deal. You can't eat an iPhone. You can't rely on an iPhone if you get sick. An iPhone can't get you to work. I mean, I guess if you could work remotely with your iPhone. 80%, sure, why not? What's wrong? I'm moving the goalposts. 75% will be enough. Based on what? Where are your facts there? Why is 75% not enough? I'm listing more than iPhones because it doesn't matter if the poor have iPhones if they don't have these other things, the basic things to live on. One of those things is communication, the ability to communicate. So in that case, an iPhone is important. You pretty much have to have an iPhone in order to get any kind of job worth having. You have or a computer. You have to have some sort of telecommunication device. But pretty much an iPhone. You have to have a phone number at the very least. So okay, yeah. Well, no, they didn't chose to get one. They don't have enough money to have all of those things. They don't have enough money to get an iPhone and pay health insurance every month. They don't have enough money to have an iPhone and reliable transportation. Yeah, there's a lot of people in that situation. Are you denying that now? Because they spent their money in order, right? How much do you think an iPhone costs a month to maintain? Is it as though you could have health insurance or pay what, $70 a month to have an iPhone? What a strange concept. Do you not have any idea how much things cost for us poors? 75 to 100. So what are you going to do with that 75 to 100? I can tell you what that's not going to buy in the US, health insurance. And if you didn't have public provided health insurance in the UK, it's not going to buy that either. It's not going to buy food for an entire family. That's for sure. Um, my wife and I, we shop pretty frugally. We don't buy extravagant things. It's not like we're going out to eat all the time. We spend at least $40 a week on food between the two of us. So yeah, that $100 a month not gonna get us more food really in any significant portion. How much is health insurance for an average 26-year-old? A lot. Eh, a lot. Let's look it up. I mean, you keep, trying to hammer me for not having these numbers, but I don't see any numbers you're providing. Average health insurance cost US. How much does health insurance cost? Employee sponsored plans average $622 a month, with individual employers paying 105 of that. So about 500 a month. Sorry, I guess not having an iPhone is not going to get you health insurance. Instead of having insurance, do you not see how 100 and 500 are not the same? Yeah, the employer pays $105. You pay $500 on average for health insurance a month. Not 100, 500. Okay? So you're not gonna get health insurance by giving up your iPhone. You know what you are gonna give up by giving up your iPhone? Your ability to find work. In a lot of cases, your ability to keep work. If they try to call you in to work, to work another shift and you're not available and they end up firing you for that. Um, you have very strange notions about how much things cost. So not you then. What? What do you mean? I do not have health insurance other than dental, which I get through my wife's insurance. I don't have health insurance. I want it. I would love to have health insurance. I'm hoping that when I go to my new job here, I'll be able to make enough to have health insurance. That'd be great. It's still not gonna cost less than an iPhone, and I still have to have an iPhone for my job, and I absolutely have to have a cell phone for my job. I need to be the point of contact for all the people that I, uh, am in contact with my new job. I'm gonna be the contact person for the entire gardening department of the landscaping company that I work for. You did say it costs less. You said that that's exactly what you said. Come on. If you're gonna be an idiot and try and troll me, at least be honest about it. Don't try to say you didn't just say people are spending money on iPhones instead of getting health insurance when you just said that. You are being an idiot. You're being disingenuous. You're putting up these really stupid solutions like cutting taxes and not buying iPhones as though that's going to give you anything. But you said an iPhone costs 75 to 100. Yeah, a month. A month. What? What are you talking about? I'm not on a pre-programmed rant. You made the claim that if poor people stopped buying iPhones, they'd be able to have health insurance. You said iPhones cost 75 to 100 a month. I looked up the statistic for the average amount that an employee has to put in to a healthcare plan in the US, found that was $500 a month. So no, I'm not conflating. That's what you said. You said that poor people make bad buying decisions. You said that they're buying iPhones instead of buying health insurance. I'm not picking at hairs. That's what you said. We're gonna move on though.
Put regulations in place that make it harder for minorities to start businesses. A national museum declares hard work and ambition to be white values. One of America's two major political parties assumes that many Black people are incapable of obtaining a driver's license or an ID card. In Oregon, Black students are told that math is a white.
I should go strawman someone else. Did I come into your chat and say a bunch of bullshit and then claim that I didn't say it? You're the one who's building straw men and slaying them. You think that poor people can stop being poor by stop buying iPhones or by cutting taxes, as though poor people are paying so much in taxes that getting that money back is going to get them health insurance and transportation. That's just not true. It's not true. So, okay. Do you have anything to say about the video we're watching? How about that? What are your thoughts on that? You can critique the way I say things all you want. That doesn't mean that you haven't been lying through this whole conversation. Saying you didn't say one thing and then, going back on it, like, whatever. Okay, cool. That's fine. So we've been through our conversation. I have given you what my solutions are. You've given me your piss poor solutions, and I guess we're at an impasse. So let's move on in the video.
White construct, all but guaranteeing failure in this essential skill. In Baltimore, less than 10% of minority students can read at grade level, all but guaranteeing failure in this essential skill.
Now, why would that be? Why would in Baltimore it be that 10%, less than 10% of students can read at grade level? That wouldn't happen to be a school funding issue. Right. You're right. I said, why do you think poor people don't have these things? Which book? What are you talking about? You said that poor people should stop buying iPhones and then they could have these other things. Your solution was tax cuts and stop spending money on iPhones. I said those are bad solutions that will not even close to make up for it. I mentioned a book like 7 seconds ago. Look at the video right now. Look at what's on screen. In Baltimore, less than 10% of minority students can read at grade level. Why do you think that is? Could that have something to do with school funding? Okay. I'm about done with you, dude, because you're not really contributing to anything here. You're just critiquing the way that I say things and lying about the things that you've said. So if you don't have anything more to critique, I think that's about it. The book graphic in the video. Yeah. So look at what it says. I didn't even mention a book. Yeah, you're lying. You're lying. I called you out for it. What facts? What facts did you lay out? That we should cut taxes? No, I don't agree to that. Score a point with who? Who am I scoring points with? Okay, I'm just going to continue on at this point. So anyway, I would suggest that a big contributing factor to the reason that in Baltimore less than 10% of minority students can read at grade level is because of poorly funded schools. Now, the way that we fund schools in the U.S. Is through taxes to the county, which are then filtered to the school district. So if you live in a very poor school district, the money going into your schools is much less than if you live in a rich district. So that's going to contribute to the quality of education that you get. Okay, but again, she's just bringing up a point, saying that it's a problem, not offering solutions or context or any sort of citation, and then moving on to the next thing.
In Oakland, no student is allowed to get a D or an F. Instead, everyone is simply promoted to the next grade whether they know the material or not. City councils demonize their own police departments, then vote to cut police budgets. Crime and murder skyrocket. The victims are almost all minorities. Prosecutors refuse to prosecute hardened criminals. Instead, they let the criminals.
What are you talking about? Can you cite a YouTube video? I'm talking about the person doing the video. I'm trying to get back on track because I've given way too much time to you as it is. Is what at my level or what I rejected? What are you talking about? I don't know. Actually, I don't care. I really had enough and I need to move on. So let's see here. What standard would I ask for what? I'm not critiquing you. Again, I'm talking. Guess what? This stream is not all about you. This stream is about the video that we're looking at here. So she, the person in this video, provides no citations. That's what I'm talking about. But I've really had enough. This is not a productive conversation. So I'm gonna have to say goodbye. All right, I'm back on track.
Back on the streets to prey on law-abiding, hard-working citizens, again, mostly Black people. That's only a few of many examples. It's shocking, but commonplace. Every day in every major city, people of color are living in this oppressive, patronizing environment. These prejudices, literally prejudgments, make it more and more difficult for Black people and other minorities to improve their lives, the very opposite of what the goal should be. In other words, the very people claiming to have Black people's and minorities' best interest at heart are instituting the very policies and attitudes that are holding them back. Sounds like systemic racism to me.
Okay, so how do you fix school funding then? Because that's going to be the biggest contributing factor to students not being able to read at grade level. I don't see a solution. All I see is her bringing up a problem, moving along, bringing up a problem, moving along. How do you solve these problems of Black students not feeling accepted or feeling intimidated going to a university that's predominantly white? What are we going to do about that stuff?
And it makes you think that we're not moving forward as a pluralistic, equal opportunity nation, but backward into Jim Crow. Now, here's the kicker.
Okay, but it's funny that she brings up a whites-only drinking fountain when in none of those cases were white people segregating themselves from anyone else. It was only providing space for minorities to feel more comfortable and to mutually support one another. Kind of the opposite of the point of Jim Crow. Because the point of Jim Crow was to keep all the gains for the white people and keep everyone else held down by claiming separate but equal, which of course, if one group of people together has a lot less resources at their disposal, that cannot be separate but equal. It's just going to perpetuate the current system.
It's not those horrible, nasty, bigoted, misogynistic, authoritarian nationalists on the right who are imposing these crushing rules and policy prescriptions. It's the woke left, the side that I revered as a beacon of tolerance, the side that I thought was on the right side of history.
The side that you've not even bothered to look past the headlines to figure out what it is that they're doing these things for. Why there is different graduation ceremonies, or not even ceremonies, but celebrations for various different minority groups. Why there's minority-only floors in certain colleges. Why students in Baltimore, which is just one school system, but still important, why the minority students there only 10% read at grade level. You haven't bothered to look into any of the causes of these things. You've just said it's all the woke and moved on from there as though that's all that matters. But there's a lot more at play here, and there's a lot more institutional things that you're not even taking a look at as to what effect they might have.
Up until a few years ago. In fact, I was so committed, I got a Black Lives Matter tattoo. I still have it. But then I had to face reality. It's the ideology of the left that has set back young students of color with lower education standards.
Oh, this is the thing they always put up, as though they have set lower education standards. I don't, and again, she's not going to point to anything in specific, but what are these lower education standards? Is that affirmative action? Because again, we've been through this. That is not lower educational standards. It's just not. The way affirmative action works, once more, is all things being equal, all test scores, all qualifications to get into a certain university or institution, all that being equal, if your candidate also has a minority status, whether they are a woman, whether they are racial minority, whatever it may be, then at that point, that sort of thing can also be considered. It's a way to keep out or to stop from being kept out people that traditionally have been held out of these institutions, because it wasn't that long ago that there were actual rules against minorities attending these colleges, actual rules against women attending these colleges, that sort of thing. So I don't know what they mean by setting different standards for people of color, because that's just not the case anywhere that you look at it.
that calls for pulling cops out of high crime areas and replacing them with social workers.
What's wrong with that? Okay, let's bring up another statistic here. Let's look at the breakdown. Oh shoot, it's 9 o'clock already, so we're not gonna finish this video. Likely. I really shouldn't let trolls derail me that much, but hey, whatever. It's in the past now. So let's look at the breakdown of how police spend their time. Let's see what. Okay. Let's share the tab here so you can take a look at it. So this is only 3 cities, so it may not be representative of the entire country, but it's a pretty big coincidence that in these 3 cities, and I guess this is a county as well, Montgomery County, Sacramento, and New Orleans, and in those Sacramento and New Orleans, sizable cities, the police only spent 4% of their time on violent crime, and that's all their paperwork, that's all their investigation, that's all the things that aren't just stopping people from doing violence. That's all the time they spent on violent crime. So, yeah, there's all these other things that police do, responding to non-criminal calls. Why do you need to bring a gun into that situation? Even traffic stops. Why do you need to have a gun for that? Um, because pretty much the only reason that police are ever shot in that situation, which is incredibly rare in the first place, but the only reason a policeman would ever be shot is if the person in the car, they feel that's the only way they can get away. Better to let everyone live and, take down the information of the car, track them down another way, and confront them in a different way than to escalate a violent altercation. So if you take a gun out of the situation, I'm absolutely sure you would see even the very minuscule amount of police being killed in traffic stops fall to basically zero. It's not likely to happen. Other crimes, so this could be all sorts. I don't know what other falls in. I guess stuff that's not property or proactive or medical or violent. Um, Property crime, again, that's mostly like somebody stole something, someone vandalized something. Uh, Again, no reason to have a gun in that situation. Proactive, just you know, patrolling. Don't have to have a gun in that situation. You could save the people who have guns for being called to a situation that requires it. Uh, Medical or other, certainly don't need to have guns in medical situations like wellness checks or that sort of thing. Um, that's never going to help out the situation. In fact, that's the way that a lot of people end up getting shot is there's a wellness check, the person behaves weird, things get out of control, and the person ends up getting shot. Doesn't have to happen. Social workers much more prepared for that sort of thing. So that 4%. So we could take the funding that goes into just that 4%, and it might not just be 4% of funding. It may be that it takes a lot more funding to combat violent crime. Whatever. We'll take all the funding for that 4% and then take the rest of it and put it into different responders that need to, or that are more equipped and better able to respond to these situations without escalating them into violence. And certainly with the hopes that there'll be far fewer people killed in these incidents on either side. Um, so yeah, it seems like social workers, giving them these sorts of jobs instead for the ones that are appropriate for a social worker to deal with, um, sounds like a much better idea. So she's just discarding it out of hand, but not saying why that is. She's acting as though you have to have a gun in every situation. You have to have a police person who can step in and violently enforce whatever law in every single situation, and that's just not the case. It tends to only escalate situations and make the likelihood of violence greater, especially since when Okay, and then this is getting into a lot of the training of police, but they're given a lot of the trainings that police go through, especially the warrior training, which has been banned, but still is attended by a lot of police across the country. They're taught to think of every situation they get into as potential life-threatening situation. So they're always ready to shoot, always, hand on the trigger. If they're just coming up to your car, they gotta have it ready. Almost done. If you want to come back on, that's fine too. Um, so that leads to a lot of the escalation in those incidents as well, just because of the mentality that police tend to do their job with, that they act as though they are an occupying force in hostile territory, and any misstep could end their life, and that getting home alive themselves is always the most important thing, uh, above and beyond doing their job even. Get home safe, get home safe. This is what's driven into the heads of police officers. But anyway, let's try and finish up this video quick. There's only a couple of minutes left.
That states that skin color is more important than character, more important than anything.
How does it ever state that? In none of these cases that she's cited has it ever said that skin color is more important than character or any other factor. At most, when she's obliquely referencing affirmative action, it means that skin color can be considered to right a historical wrong, but only if all of the academic standards have already been met. So again, not more important than everything, because if you don't qualify to get into that institution, you're not getting in, no matter what your skin color is. It's only something that can be considered above and beyond based on historic prevalence of your particular minority group getting into that college, or any minority group getting into that college or institution.
Yes, it is the woke left that is systemically racist, not America. The race hoax epidemic is proof. There have been dozens of these hoaxes over the last few years. Nooses on garages, the N-word on dorm rooms, this is MAGA country taunts on cold city streets.
Again, just discarding it out of hand, no evidence, no citation, nothing saying this is that would actually lead you to believe this is a hoax, other than her just saying it with authority, with an authoritative tone. So there's no reason to believe that she's presenting this without evidence. It's entirely reasonable to discard what she says without evidence. To say that all of these things have been hoaxes, again, but even that, these sort of one-off incidents, that's not what people mean when they talk about systemic racism. They talk about historic systemic barriers to people, including the way that we fund educational systems by making sure that the poorest communities have the least amount of dollars for education. That, even without mentioning race, makes sure that historically, since Black people are historically less wealthy than white people by a considerable bit, even in this day and age, on average are less wealthy than white people. That means that just by having that policy that ties where you live to how good your schools are, that means that Black people are going to have, on average, less good schools. Schools that are just under-resourced, underfunded. And then on top of that, if you add the problems of capitalism, that leads to a lot of the problems at home. Most domestic disturbances, most domestic disputes are rooted in money and usually arguments over it. So doing away with that sort of thing is an underlying pressure would do wonders to improving the academic performance and the life prospects of your average minority student. Just making people have to scrape and scrape to survive, having to move every few months because your parents just can't make enough money, and you know uh, they have one unexpected expense, they can't make rent, they got to move a lot. That can disrupt you academically. That can really lower your chances to succeed in the workplace later on in life. All these sorts of things can be tied to poverty, which is still historically, a effective historical oppression. So even if we got rid of all the laws that disadvantaged poor communities, it's still going to take a while for the system to catch up. My parents, I'm just about 40 years old. My parents were born before the Voting Rights Act. more than a decade before the Voting Rights Act. I could be the first generation to live without the Voting Rights Act. I think redlining was done away with slightly before I was born. So my parents could have been, had I been born into a family of color, they could have been subject to redlining and have disadvantages that way. I could be the first generation to live without redlining as a 40-year-old man. These things are not in the distant past. They still have effects today. And it's going to take a long time for these historical injustices to even out. And even if they do, there's still the systemic inequality between rich and poor that capitalism brings. So even if we were to make it so Black people were on the exact same level with white people for each class, so there was I think Black people were about 13%, something like that, of the U.S. population. If they were represented in 13% of all political positions, if they were in 13% of the boards of directors of powerful corporations, they had perfectly equal representation throughout the strata of society. That doesn't end the problems of capitalism. So even if we do away with some of these systemic racist injustices, we still are left with um, systemic economic disadvantages. Poor people will still, on average, stay poor. And that is still the truth, that the number one thing in the US, the number one determining factor and predictor of where you will end up in life economically in the US is where you start from. That's it. For all the talk of social mobility, and it does happen on occasion, these are the outlying cases. But for all the talk and all the American exceptionalism that we like to tout, still the number one determinant is where you start from. So if you are coming from an area or a class of people that has historically been oppressed, and you're maybe the first or second generation to live without even some of that oppression, overt oppression, um, you may not be in a position to have caught up. Like, you're expecting people to catch up in one generation. That's just not going to happen. So I don't know. Her entire thesis, this is somehow policies of the left. Well, I mean, she hasn't really established how that is. She's not cited a single source. She's not given context for any of this stuff or why it might happen. And just calling things a hoax and saying that these shouldn't be problems doesn't make it then not a problem. You still have to deal with the problems at the end of the day. And I'm not really hearing a lot of how to.
Virtually every
For a video that is titled "How to Stop Systemic Racism," I haven't heard a single solution proposed in 3/5 of the video that we've already been through.
one of them has been faked. The demand for racism
Everyone has been faked. No, I doubt that's true, but even if it is, that's not really what people are talking about when they talk about systemic racism.
exceeds the supply.
Beside the point.
If racism against Black people or any other minority group was rampant, you wouldn't have to fake it to convince people how bad things are.
We don't have to fake it. We can look at statistical averages of where people end up in their life. We can look at the average amount of wealth that a Black family has versus a white family. We can look at where people are represented in society. All the highest positions of power, almost wall to wall, white men. Sometimes some people of some minority status get into those positions. But that's still the exception, not nearly the rule, and not even close to on par with the racial breakdown or the gender breakdown or any breakdown that you could have between majority and minority groups. So all we have to do is look at that. All we have to do is look at outcomes, and we can tell that there is systemic inequality. That's how you know there's systemic inequality, is you have different outcomes based on arbitrary characteristics like race or gender or whatever. If we truly had equal opportunity, then unless you believe there's something really different about different races or different genders or different minority and majority categories, unless you think there's something fundamentally different about that is both fundamental, like at the genetic level, immutable, as you cannot change that through any amount of education or training or exposure or whatever, and unless you believe those things are true, it has to be something else, meaning we don't have equal opportunities. We don't have this supposedly meritocratic society. So, but again, where are the solutions? We're almost done with this video.
Did
No
anyone
solutions
fake
yet,
racism in the South in the 1950s? But there is so little now.
because it was overt then. It was overt then. And again, my parents were born in the 1950s. A lot of people my age, in my generation, are first generation to be beyond systemic race, overtly systemic racism, like written into the laws. So, yeah, it, that level of holding an entire people back is not going to be corrected within a generation.
That the race-obsessed woke left has manufactured unconscious racism and microaggressions to fool people into believing America is systemically racist.
And you are just discarding those things out of hand, not even considering whether or not there's any merit to any of those ideas or whether they have any effect on society as a whole.
That's not to say racism doesn't exist. Of course it does. There will always be small-minded people, but their number.
Again, I've said this many times, but this is how conservatives view the world. Everything comes down to individuals. It's as Margaret Thatcher, that's for my UK friend from earlier. It's as Margaret Thatcher said, there's no such thing as society. There's only families and individuals. That's the conservative mindset in a nutshell. So that's why she's trying to pin everything to individuals, because if you pin everything to individuals, then it's outside the realm of possibility that there could be any sort of outside pressures or systemic pressures or reverberations from history that still affect people today. That becomes an impossibility because it all comes down to the individual and individual choices. It has to be just individual people making bad individual choices again and again and again. And it just so happens that it's these same groups again and again and again making these bad choices, and that's why you have unequal outcomes at the end. It's ridiculous. It is bollocks, again, to borrow a UK term. There are broader pressures at play. There are reasons that are not individual, that every corridor of power you can look at, you have white people and men well overrepresented. It cannot all be explained away by individual choices and then have individual solutions. So again, the solution is make better individual choices. What if you made every good individual choice and you still don't win? If you only think they're individuals, you're just going to have to keep blaming yourself. You can never look to anything outside of yourself, any other cause. It couldn't be nepotism or, legacy, which is the rich version of affirmative action. Did your grandfather go to this institution or your father? Well, then you have a better chance of getting in too. That's the rich version of affirmative action. But of course, we won't talk about that because legacy. Considering legacy, that's the way things are supposed to be done. Of course, the best people should go to the best places, and the best people are genetically just going to breed the best people, and so on and so forth. That's how you have, generation after generation of wealthy people because they're just of better stock. That's always the implication. They may not come out and say it explicitly, but that's always the implication. When you make everything about individuals, then of course, if generation after generation you have individuals that have really easy lives and are in really good positions, that's the implication. That's all there can be, is that, unless by chance every individual just in that line just keeps making good decisions and every individual from the lower classes make bad decisions, just happens to be the chance. Unless you think that, or unless you think there's something inherent genetically about these various people and why they end up in different places, you cannot just blame individual choices. There has to be more at work.
Numbers are as small as their minds. And in case you're thinking of George Floyd, please know even Minnesota's leftist attorney general admitted the incident had nothing to do with Floyd being black.
I very much doubt that, but I don't have time to look that up. I encourage you all to look that up because that's probably, it's not even in quotation, so I'm going to assume there's at least more context to what he said. Because everyone, even Keith Ellison thought that. It's pretty clear that race had something to do with that incident, and that's not even close to minority opinion.
Black. My father and millions of Africans didn't immigrate to America so that they could live in a racist society. They immigrated so that they could have opportunities that were only available to them here.
Let's assume that's true, that there is actually more opportunity than wherever her father immigrated from. That very well could be. There's plenty of very repressive African countries where there isn't a lot of opportunity. There's very many overall impoverished African countries. That could be. Let's assume that's true, and there is more opportunity here. That doesn't by default then make America the best place that there is in the world, or the best that it possibly could be. Even if we were doing better than every other country, there's still room for improvement, right? Like, is there anyone in America that thinks it is absolutely the best of all possible countries that it possibly could be? I mean, PragerEwww brings up problems all the time with America. Obviously, they think there's room for improvement, as I mean, everyone should, just in a general, abstract sense. Everyone should want better for their country. So it just kind of seems like she's making a don't complain because things could be worse argument, which is very disempowering. That's not going to make the change that you want.
So, to all the leftists out there, I understand why you believe what you believe.
No, you don't.
I was once one of you.
I very much doubt that as well. I haven't looked into her background yet, but even if that's true, and she really did leave the left and all that stuff, you were at best a liberal, I would bet, not an actual leftist.
It's time to ask yourself some questions. Is it really helping Black?
I'll have some more comments here. I want better for my country by educating leftists on how not to be left-wing anymore. Liberals are not left-wing. Come on. Gonzo, mister. And they're on the right. They believe in capitalism. They believe in a system that systematically disadvantages people through no fault of their own. I would say that pretty firmly puts them on the right. Okay. I mean, you can make whatever claim you want. I define left as believing people are basically equal. Everyone has equal worth, and therefore they all deserve, at the very least, the basics of life, so that they can actually have choices. It's really life, liberty, pursuit of happiness. If you don't have the basics of life provided for you, and there's not an easy way to get it, and it's not afforded to everyone, then you don't have the ability to make choices. So there goes your pursuit of happiness. If you can't afford medical and you die, there goes your life. If you can't afford food or shelter, that could easily end your life. So you don't have a guarantee of those. And liberty, if you're not in a position to actually make any choices, so you're out of liberty too. So America, despite all of what it pretends to be, is not the land of life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. That's just an aspirational myth that is not the case. They're not left-wing. They're not. Tell me how they're left-wing. What is one liberal belief that puts them firmly on the left and distinct and different from the right? I'll give you some time to answer that.
People to tell them they're not as responsible for their actions as anyone else? Isn't it condescending, if not outright bigoted, to expect less from somebody purely based on
So solutions. Where are
their
these
race?
solutions?
Isn't it clear that we should judge each person on their merits, not their skin color? Wouldn't that do more to create an
seconds
equitable society than 100 government programs? Yes, there really is systemic racism, and it's hurting the country, but it's not coming from the direction you think. Once you realize that, everything changes.
Liberals are not left-wing by definition. What is the definition of left-wing then? Let's go with that.
I'm Lepanobi for Prager University.
Eplanobi.
Thank you for watching this video.
Better way of pronouncing her name. Okay, just saying yes they are is not an answer though. What is the definition of left-wing then? If not the belief that everyone deserves life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Everyone deserves to have the basics, therefore, met for them. Anything left of a global Overton center or a relative Overton center. So by U.S. standards, sure, liberals are on the left. By any other global standard, no, they're not. Come on, not even close. Even Canada, when they're talking about U.S. politics, presents Democrats as another right-wing party, another party on the right, and maybe center-right, but they're on the right. Anyway, I got to wrap things up tonight. I got to get to bed because I do work tomorrow. But thank you all for hanging out with me. And no, not by any global. That's absolutely wrong. Do some more research on that. I'll say, yeah, go do your own research. It's the no. Those are capitalist countries as well. So that still does put them on the right as well. But no, left is left of that. Left of social democracies. That's actual left. All right. Thanks for hanging out, and I will see you tomorrow night. Probably do something on permaculture. Yeah, they're capitalists. I know that. Cool. That's still on the right. Capitalism is right. On the right. Social democracy is capitalist. Yep. Social democracy. Democratic socialism is kind of the bare minimum to get on the left. Any sort of actual socialism is on the left. But all right.